Hey guys, tonight we're tiptoeing into the sticky, spanked, soap-flavored world of the 1950s American mother, the woman who ran her household like a tiny police state armed with a wooden spoon, a bar of ivory, and the single most terrifying sentence in the English language: wait until your father gets home. Not with courts, not with prisons, not with anything so formal. No, with a switch you had to cut yourself, a razor strop hanging on the wall at exactly child height, and a corner of the kitchen where time slowed down specifically to punish you. Before we tuck in, be a dear and press that like button, and subscribe if you'd like to keep falling asleep to history's coziest horrors. And leave me a note below saying what your own grandmother used to threaten you with, because someone out there was raised on the castor oil, and I genuinely need to hear about it. Settle in properly. Blinds drawn, fan turned low, pillow arranged exactly how you like it, and maybe keep your feet nice and still, just in case an imaginary 1950s mother is somewhere grading your posture in your sleep. What does a wooden spoon do when it isn't making gravy? Why did every bathroom in America have a leather strap on the wall, and why did nobody think that was strange? What made Fell's naphtha too chemical for a child's mouth, and who volunteered to find that out? How did a friendly book about being kinder to children get blamed for an entire decade? Why was Santa Claus quietly running the largest surveillance program in the country? And what, exactly, is the correct branch to bring back when your mother has sent you to fetch your own? Congratulations! It is a Tuesday morning in 1955, and this kitchen is yours. You're wearing a crisp Hauser dress. There is a spoon in the drawer, a book on the shelf that flatly disagrees with the spoon, and 4 children who have already, somehow, done something. Your husband gets home at 5:30. The house is quiet, orderly, and lying. Good luck. You are stirring gravy with a wooden spoon, and the wooden spoon is thinking about its other career. It lives in the top drawer by the stove, the one that sticks, and it comes out for 2 reasons, and only one of them is dinner. Your children know this. They watch which way you carry it. Held low and loose, it is a kitchen tool. Held a certain other way, it is a change in the weather. You did not decide any of this. The spoon came with the house and the century. The drawer itself is part of the performance. It sticks, and so it announces. You pull it, it resists. Then it gives with a wooden bark that carries into the next room, and somewhere in that next room a child freezes mid-crime. The drawer is an early warning system installed by no one, maintained by gravity, more reliable than any alarm you could buy. Danny can be halfway through torturing his sister and go still at the sound of it, the way a rabbit goes still, calculating whether the noise was gravy or judgment. And the spoon plays both parts without apology. This is the strange genius of it. A paddle would only ever be a paddle, a strop only strops. But the spoon spends its morning doing genuinely tender work, folding butter, coaxing lumps out of the cream sauce, tapping the rim of the pot in a satisfied little way, and then, without changing clothes, it turns and becomes the most feared object in a 4-foot radius. It is a public servant with 2 jobs and no conflict of interest laws. You hold it up to check the gravy, and Buddy, who is 6 and has the survival instincts of something hunted, watches the arc of your wrist with total attention. He is not admiring the sauce. He is reading you the way sailors read the sky. You could be lifting it to your mouth to taste. You could be lifting it for the other reason. The distance between those 2 acts is about 8 inches and the entire emotional life of a small boy. Let's talk about the theatre of it, because the spoon is mostly theatre. It is out on the counter now, resting against the pot, and it says nothing, because it does not have to. It just sits there, greasy, patient, and entirely unbothered, radiating the memory of every time it has been more than a spoon. A wooden spoon at rest in this kitchen has the quiet authority of a judge who has not yet decided to speak. The children give it a respectful berth. They would sooner reach past a sleeping dog. Your own mother had one too, and hers had a burn mark on the handle, and you can still describe that burn mark with your eyes closed, which tells you something about how these objects file themselves in a person. You did not keep hers. You bought your own plain maple, approximately 11 inches of impending consequence from the hardware store for 11 cents, and you carried it home in a paper sack, not thinking about what it would come to mean, and now it means everything, and it cost 11 cents. The actual moments when they come are brief and quiet, and you do not linger on them, and neither will we. A swat, a startled cry, a lesson delivered in the shorthand the whole culture agreed on before you were born. It is over in a moment. What lasts is the drawer, the arc of the wrist, the 8 inches, the long institutional presence of a kitchen tool that everyone in the house has agreed to be afraid of. You set it back in the drawer. The drawer sticks, then gives, then barks. 3 rooms away, a child you cannot see recalculates his afternoon. You stir the gravy with a spare and you think, not for the first time, that the most powerful thing in your kitchen is the cheapest and that it is currently lying down, resting up, saying nothing at all. You have said it again, the sentence that buys you an entire afternoon of quiet, and you have said it because it works. Your husband is at the office and will not return until 5:30, and until then the offence sits in a folder in your head, filed, time-stamped, awaiting review. You are not the judge in this arrangement. You are the daytime clerk who takes the report, keeps the peace, and delivers the case file at dinner. The waiting does most of the work. You barely have to lift a hand. Consider the machinery you have just set in motion. It is beautiful, in the way a good filing system is beautiful. You have taken a live problem and converted it into a deferred appointment, and a deferred appointment with a large, tired man is a heavier thing than any spanking. Danny will now spend 4 hours anticipating, which is a punishment you did not have to administer, could not have improved, and get entirely for free. This is basically a manager escalating a ticket to a director who only ever appears for the firings. The genius and the trap is that you are both prosecutor and stenographer. All afternoon you are assembling the case, what he did, when he did it, whether the vase was already cracked. You will present this at dinner, calmly, over the meatloaf, and Walter will listen with the weary gravity of a man who has been at the office all day and would like, more than anything, to simply eat. He does not want to be the court, but the culture handed him a robe he never asked for, and he wears it about as enthusiastically as you would expect. Danny's afternoon becomes its own long theatre. He does his chores with unusual diligence. He is polite to his sister, which is unnatural, unprompted, and slightly alarming. He is, in effect, mounting a defence through good behaviour, hoping that the ledger might tip, that you might, at 10-6, decide the case does not need to go up the chain after all. Sometimes you let him think it. The reprieve is real, and it is also a tool, and you are honest enough with yourself to know it is both. There is a clock on this, and the clock is the front door. Every afternoon of your childhood ended with the same 3 sounds in the same order, and now you have installed them in your own children, the car in the drive, the screen door, the voice in the hall. When it turns the corner, a specific silence falls over the house, and you, standing at the stove, feel the whole afternoon arrive at its due date. The part nobody advertises is this: you do not always deliver the file. Half the time, by 5:30, the offence has cooled, and Danny has been good, and you are tired, and you quietly close the folder and never mention it. The threat did the entire job on its own. Walter comes home to a peaceful house and eats his meatloaf in blessed ignorance of the trial that was scheduled and dismissed above his head, and everyone is served by the fiction that he is the authority. The whole arrangement runs on one fact, and you know it standing there with the gravy. The father is the Supreme Court, invoked rarely, spoken of gravely, and mostly kept in reserve so that his rare appearances land. You are the entire rest of the government. You are the police, the clerk, the prosecutor, the parole board, and, most afternoons, the quiet judge who decides the case never needed to be heard at all. The car turns the corner, the screen door, the voice. Danny straightens in his chair like a small defendant, and you set down the platter, and you catch his eye, and you decide, right then, in the half-second before Walter sits, whether today is a day for the court, or a day the folder goes quietly back in the drawer. You are running the breakfast table like a small parliament with one rule, and the rule is that the members do not speak. Adults may speak. Children may answer when addressed and otherwise apply themselves to the oatmeal. When your husband's boss visits, or the minister, or your own mother, the children rise when the adult enters and sit when told, and they say yes ma'am and no sir in the flat voices of well-drilled recruits. You are not being cruel. You are being graded, silently by everyone in the room, on how quiet your children are. The phrase came to you fully formed, the way inherited things do. Children should be seen and not heard. Nobody explained it. You simply absorbed it, the way you absorbed which fork and how to iron a collar, and now it governs every room that contains both a child and a grown-up. It is not that your children have nothing to say. Carol has a great deal to say, most of it about horses, all of it dammed up behind the rule and released only in the safe hours when no company is present. Watch what a visitor does to the table. On an ordinary Tuesday, breakfast is nearly human. There is talk. Buddy narrates his dream. Danny argues about the funny pages. But the moment Reverend Ames is expected, the whole apparatus stiffens. The children are scrubbed, seated and silenced, present but muted, like furniture that can pass the jam. The Reverend butters his toast and remarks on what fine, quiet children you have. That remark is the whole game. You glow, and you hate that you glow. Because the quiet is the report card, this is the thing that makes it so relentless. A silent, still, well-mannered child is not read as a repressed child. He is read as evidence, direct and public evidence, of a competent mother, and a loud one is read as the opposite, and the reading happens instantly, in front of everyone, and it attaches to you and not to him. So you enforce the silence not only for its own sake, but because your own standing is sitting there in a clean shirt with oatmeal on its chin. The rising is its own small choreography. When an adult enters, the children stand. Not because anyone will thank them, but because the failure to stand is a visible crack. Danny stands with the resentment of a boy who has calculated that no one stands for him ever, and is correct and cannot say so. He rises, he is acknowledged with a nod, he sits. The transaction is bloodless and complete, a tiny act of court etiquette performed over the cereal bowls, and it is the sort of thing that produces adults who, 40 years later, still half rise when a woman enters a room and cannot say why. The children can read the rule's edges, which is the loophole nobody planned. They know that the kitchen at 10 a.m., just you and them, is a country with different laws. There the talk floods back. Buddy tells you the whole dream. Carol delivers the horse report in full. You listen, and you answer, and you are, for an hour, not a proctor but a mother. And then the doorbell rings and the border closes again. Mrs. Aldrich, who misses nothing, once told another mother on the party line that your children were the best behaved on the block, and it reached you by afternoon, and it landed like a medal you were ashamed to want. That is the currency you are paid in. Not the children's happiness, exactly. Their compliance, witnessed and reported, converted into your reputation, spent at church and over fences, and in the small economy of who is doing motherhood correctly. Breakfast ends. The company leaves. The rule relaxes its grip finger by finger, and the noise comes back into the house like water finding its level. And you let it, because the quiet was never for you, it was for the audience. And the audience has gone home. You have heard the word come out of your 6-year-old, the word he could only have gotten from your husband or the man who delivers the ice, and now you are walking him to the bathroom sink. There is a system here and you did not invent it. There is a soap for this. You reach for the bar, you run it once under the tap, and you explain, calmly, that the mouth that said the thing is about to be washed. He knows what is coming. He has seen his sister go through it. He opens his mouth the way you open a door you do not want to. There is, and this is the genuinely strange part, a brand hierarchy. Every mother on the block knows it, and none of them wrote it down, and yet the rankings are as fixed as the batting order. Ivory is the merciful choice, the 99 and 44/100% pure bar that floats in the tub, now conscripted into a job the advertising men never mentioned. Fell's naphtha, the heavy brown laundry bar, is a serious escalation, harsh enough that some mothers quietly retired it for being too chemical, which is a phrase that should not be allowed to exist. And lava, the gritty one with the pumice in it, the one that scours grease off a mechanic's hands, is the bar you reach for only in your imagination, on the days you would never actually do it. Buddy gets ivory. He is 6, and it is a first offence, and you are not a monster, you are a bookkeeper of sins with a graduated scale. The ritual has its own manners, learned from your mother the way you learned everything else. The tongue comes out and stays out, so that nothing is swallowed, so that this remains correction and does not tip into something worse. About a minute. The taste does the teaching. You stand there timing it, and he stands there with his tongue extended and his eyes watering, and the two of you are participating in a ceremony older than either of you. The taste is the point, and the taste is unforgettable. Ivory in the mouth is soap pretending to be food, slick and bitter and faintly floral, a flavour that clings to the back of a person for 60 years and returns, uninvited, the next time they smell a fresh bar. Not legally a food, but convincingly. This is aversion therapy conducted with a laundry product, and it works, which is the uncomfortable thing, because the next time the word rises in Buddy's throat, some small animal part of him will taste ivory before he can say it and swallow it back down. School boards, you understand, have actually voted on this. Somewhere, men in suits sat around a table and formally ruled that washing a child's mouth with soap was an acceptable use of a teacher's morning. It is not a rogue practice performed by cruel mothers in dark kitchens. It is policy, endorsed, minuted, and filed in a cabinet somewhere. The actual moment is brief and quiet, the way these things are, and you do not draw it out. A minute passes. You take the bar away. You hand him a cup of water, and he rinses and spits and rinses again, and his eyes are red, and you crouch down and you tell him, gently, that you love him and that the mouth is a nice mouth and should say nice things. And he nods, because he wants the crouch and the gentleness more than he wants to argue. You put the bar back in its dish. It sits there, wet, faintly gnawed at one corner, a bar of ivory soap that has now lived 2 lives, and tomorrow it will wash somebody's hands and no one will think a thing of it. Mrs. Ferro, over the fence later, will mention that her Ronnie got the Fells naphtha last week, and you will nod, one professional to another, and neither of you will find any of this remarkable at all. You have sent him out to the hedge, and now you are waiting at the back step while your son selects the instrument of his own correction. This is the arrangement your mother used and her mother before her. He must choose a branch, thin enough to sting and long enough to reach, and he must strip the leaves and carry it back to you himself. Choose one too small and you send him back. The walk to the hedge is half the punishment. The walk back, switch in hand, is the other half, and he takes it slowly. Sit for a moment with the sheer cleverness of it, the awful, economical cleverness. You have outsourced the manufacture of the tool to the person it will be used on. There is no equipment to buy, no paddle to store, no strop to hang. The forsythia by the fence produces a fresh supply every spring, free of charge, and the child does the assembly himself. It is the most vertically integrated punishment in America, and it is practiced from Georgia to the edge of your own back lawn. Danny is out there now, and you can watch the whole negotiation from the step. He knows the rules of switch selection better than he knows his times tables. There are exactly 2 acceptable branches on that hedge, and he has to find one of them. Too thick and it thuds and does little, but a branch that obvious reads as a dodge. Too thin and it whips and sings, and he has in effect sentenced himself. So he stands at the hedge conducting a grim little appraisal, bending candidates, testing them against his own leg, trying to find the one branch in the whole shrub that satisfies the letter of your instruction while betraying him the least. The stripping of the leaves is the part that gets to you, if you let it, so you try not to let it. He runs the branch through his fist to clean it, the way he has seen done, preparing the thing with his own hands, and there is no version of this that is not strange, a child grooming the switch that is meant for him, and the culture has decided this is character building, and here you are, standing on the step, upholding it. The ritual is not for the sting is almost incidental, the lesson is the walk. It is the 10 minutes of anticipation, self-directed, unsupervised, in which a boy stands alone at a hedge and contemplates what he did and what it is about to cost, and no adult has to say a word. The punishment administers itself in the imagination long before the branch ever moves. He comes back across the lawn. He holds it out to you, handle first, because even this has a courtesy to it, and you take it, and you inspect it the way a sergeant inspects a rifle, and it passes. Mrs. Ferro is watching from her kitchen window, and if you had rejected the branch and sent him back a second time, she would have thought you thorough. The actual correction is brief, and both of you know it was coming from the moment you pointed at the hedge. You know exactly which branch he will come back with, because 30 years ago you stood at a different hedge in a different yard doing the identical arithmetic, and you chose the thin one because the thick one would have been read as a dodge. Your mother took it from you handle first, the way you are about to take this one from him. Nobody in this family has ever discussed the hedge. Everybody in this family knows the hedge. You set the switch on top of the icebox, out of reach, and it dries there, and within a week it is brittle, useless, and forgotten, and gets thrown out with the trimmings, which is the final joke of the whole arrangement. The tool does not last. The hedge just grows another one, and Danny, for about 9 days, is the most courteous boy in the county. You bought the hairbrush from the Fuller Brush man at the front door, and you bought it for hair, mostly. It is the heavy kind, wooden-backed, the bristles stiff, and it sits on the dresser doing honest work every morning on 3 sets of tangles. But everyone in the house understands its range. When a voice is raised or a lie is caught, the hairbrush does not stay on the dresser. Your daughter has learned to read your hand as it moves toward it. She grooms and she flinches from the same object, which is a strange thing to ask of a child and a hairbrush. The Fuller Brush man, Mr. Ordway, comes to the door twice a year with a case of gleaming implements, and he demonstrates each one with the wounded sincerity of a man who believes in bristles. He does not mention the second use. He sells you the hairbrush on its merits, the fine oval back, the boar bristle, the lifetime guarantee, and you buy it, and you both know, in the unspoken way of adults, exactly what a heavy wooden hairbrush does in a house full of children. He tips his hat. You close the door. The transaction is complete on 2 levels, and only one of them is ever spoken aloud. The hairbrush outranks the kitchen tools in the private ledger your children keep. Those live downstairs, in a room with its own weather, and they can be avoided. The hairbrush lives in the bedroom, on the dresser, in the most intimate part of the morning, and it comes at you during a tender act. Carol sits between your knees each morning while you work through her tangles, and it hurts a little. Hair always hurts a little, and she cannot fully tell the difference anymore between the hurt of grooming and the promise of the other thing. The tool blurs the line for her, and you see it in how she holds her shoulders. The brush itself has taken on that dresser-top personality, the way daily objects do. It lies there among the bobby pins and the cold cream, domestic, ominous, and completely silent, an object that has learned to mean 2 things and refuses to pick one. A hairbrush at rest is not a threat, but a hairbrush at rest that has, on occasion, not been at rest, acquires a certain reputation on the dresser, and the other objects seem to give it room. Let's talk about the strangeness of the double life, because it is the whole point. Most instruments of correction are honest about themselves. A paddle is a paddle. But the hairbrush leads a respectable public life and a private second one, groomed hair by day and something else entirely on the bad evenings, and it never has to declare which it is until your hand is already reaching. That ambiguity is efficient. It means the brush is disciplining even while it is only brushing. Carol behaves better simply because the object exists on the dresser, watching, dual purpose, patient. The actual moments are few, and you would honestly rather use it less than you do. You are not fond of it. There are mornings the tangle is bad, and Carol yelps, and you feel her brace for a thing that is not coming, only a knot, only hair, and you have to say, softly, it is only a knot, and she unclenches, and the fact that you have to say that at all sits in you for the rest of the day. So the brush stays on the dresser and does its 2 jobs, and Mr. Ordway comes back in the spring with a whole case of new temptations, and you buy a shoe brush and a vegetable brush and decline, gently, a second hairbrush, because one is plenty, because one is already carrying more meaning than a brush was ever built to hold. You pass the razor strop a dozen times a day and you have stopped seeing it, but your children never stop seeing it. It hangs on its hook by the bathroom door, a long strap of leather that your husband uses on Sunday mornings to put an edge on his straight razor. That is its stated purpose. That is what it is for. But it also hangs there, in plain sight, at exactly child height, doing a second and quieter job, which is to be visible. It does not have to be used often. It has to be seen. The strop is the household's standing army, and like a standing army, its entire value is that it rarely marches. It hangs by the door, long, dark, and supple, and every child who passes it on the way to brush his teeth receives a small, silent reminder that the leather is there, that it is real, that it belongs to the man of the house, and that it is, in theory, available. The reminder costs you nothing. The strop could rent itself out as a threat and take weekends off. On Sunday mornings it earns its innocent reputation. Walter takes it down, loops it over the doorknob, and draws the blade along it in that long, practiced motion, back and forth, the leather making a sound like a slow exhale, a sound that means nothing more dangerous than a man getting ready for church. Danny watches from the hall on those mornings with complicated feelings, because it is only shaving, it is plainly only shaving, and yet it is also the same strap, and the sound of it is the sound he hears in other, worse contexts, and his stomach does not fully believe the calendar. That is the peculiar cruelty of a dual-purpose object, and the strop is the purest example in the house. The kitchen tools at least stay in the kitchen. The strop hangs at the threshold of the one room everyone must enter several times a day, and so it cannot be avoided, cannot be forgotten, cannot be filed away. It greets you at your most vulnerable and unclothed and reminds you, leather against the wall, that the household runs on a hierarchy and you are at the bottom of it. Even the towel rack seems to keep a respectful distance. The strop is mostly a bluff. Walter takes it down maybe 4 times a year and puts an edge on his razor with it 52, and not one child in this house has ever done that arithmetic. The leather is worn pale in one spot where his thumb rides, and that pale spot is the only part of it any of them could describe from memory. Its power over them is enormous and constant, far out of proportion to its actual employment. The children obey a piece of leather that mostly just hangs there. You are running a large part of your household on the credible threat of an object, and the credibility does not require use, only presence, only the hook by the door, and the long dark shape at child height. The rare occasions are brief and belong mostly to Sunday nights and the serious offences, the ones reserved for the father, and they are not the point. The daily walk past the hook does the work instead. The glance up, the small recalibration a child makes a dozen times a day without ever knowing he is making it. When the boys are grown and gone, decades from now, one of them will walk into a barber shop, and the barber will strop a razor, back and forth, that slow leather exhale, and your son, a grown man in a chair, will feel something move in his stomach that he cannot name and cannot explain to the barber, who is only sharpening a blade. The strop does its longest work long after it comes down off the hook. You have put your daughter in the corner, nose to the plaster, and now you are both listening to the same clock. 10 minutes, you said, and 10 minutes is the sentence, but a clock in a quiet kitchen does not move at the speed a child expects. She stands with her toes to the baseboard and her face to the wall, and she is not allowed to turn, and she is not allowed to speak, and she is learning that time is a thing an adult controls. You go on shelling peas, the clock does the disciplining now. You are just the warden. The corner is the most civilized tool you own, and you reach for it more than any other, because it draws no blood, leaves no mark, and requires nothing of you but the willingness to ignore a small person for a fixed stretch, no implements at all. Just plaster, a clock, and the quiet cruelty of doing nothing to a child who very badly wants you to do something. It is discipline by subtraction, and it is, in its bloodless way, harder to endure than a swat, which at least ends. Carol has learned the geography of this particular corner the way a prisoner learns a cell. There is a hairline crack in the plaster shaped a little like the Mississippi, and a spot where the paint went thin, and a place where 2 walls do not quite meet, and she has traded remarks with all of them over the years, silently, because talking extends the sentence. The corner is boring in a total, oceanic way, and the boredom is the point. A bored child, held still, marinating in the offence, is a child being corrected by her own mind, which is the cheapest labour in the house. And the clock is the co-warden, the enforcer you did not have to hire. The kitchen clock hangs above the icebox, round, white, and utterly indifferent, and its second hand does not sweep, it ticks, one deliberate tick at a time, and a child facing the wall counts those ticks the way a castaway counts waves. 10 minutes contains 600 ticks. Carol knows this, because she has counted, and she has learned the deep injustice that 600 ticks endured is far longer than 600 ticks ignored. Time, she is discovering, is elastic, and adults hold the far end of it. Let's talk about what makes the corner sting, because it is not the standing, it is the exclusion. Life goes on behind her. The peas rattle into the bowl. Buddy comes through and gets a cookie, and she can hear the whole transaction and cannot turn. The radio plays low. The ordinary warm business of the kitchen continues at her back, and she is in it and not of it, present but disqualified, close enough to hear the family and forbidden to face it. That is the true sentence. Not the wall, the being turned away from the room. The minutes do end, and when they do it lands quietly, no drama, you simply say, "All right," and she turns, blinking, re-entering the room like a swimmer surfacing, and the offence is considered paid. There is no lecture, the corner was the lecture. She rejoins the kitchen and reaches, tentatively, for a pea, and you let her have it, and the whole thing closes without another word. Tomorrow it will be Buddy's turn, for something involving the dog and an open jar of pickles, and he will stand exactly where she stood and find the crack shaped like the Mississippi and start counting his own 600 ticks. The plaster has held 4 children now and has never once offered an opinion about any of them. It is the only thing in this kitchen that does not take a side. She stands. The clock ticks. You shell the peas. You have put the plate down again, the same plate, the liver and the boiled carrots, and your son has decided he is not going to eat it, and you have decided that he is. You lived through the ration book. You remember what it meant to want food and not have it, and a child pushing a full plate away is not fussiness to you. It is a small insult to everyone who went hungry. So the plate stays, he stays. If he does not finish at supper, it meets him again at breakfast, colder, congealed, patient. The plate has all night. This is discipline built on a wound, and you know it, and it does not stop you. You came up in the years when a can of anything was a small victory and a wasted crust was close to a sin, and no lecture from any magazine can quite reach the part of you that watches a child refuse food and feels the old scarcity clench. So the rule is absolute in your house. You take what is served. You finish what you take. The plate is not a suggestion. The plate is a moral position with gravy on it. The liver is the great battlefield, as it is in every house on the block. Liver is what mothers serve because it is cheap and full of iron and good for the blood, and it is what children have hated with a pure, clean hatred since the beginning of liver. Buddy sits before his portion the way a small nation sits before a larger one, defiant, doomed, and entirely outnumbered. He has tried hiding it under the carrots. He has tried the dog, who has standards. He is now down to the last strategy, which is simply to wait you out, and he does not yet understand that on the subject of wasted food, you cannot be waited out. The congealing is the part that turns the screw. A hot plate refused is one thing. A cold plate, the same food 4 hours later, the gravy gone to a skin, the carrots gone to a memory, presented again at breakfast with the eggs, is a different and more serious opponent. This is basically a debt that accrues interest overnight, and the interest is texture. Buddy learns, slowly, over the course of a very long evening and a grim morning, that the plate does not go away, that it has more patience than he does, that it will follow him into tomorrow like a small, dutiful ghost. The pity has rules of its own. A genuinely small child gets a genuinely small portion, because the rule is that you finish what is served, and so you serve, quietly, less. This is the loophole every experienced mother knows, and no experienced mother mentions. You control the size of the mountain the child must climb. A wise portion is itself a kind of kindness disguised as strictness, and you dole it out with a straight face and a steady hand. The standoff, when it truly comes, is brief and grim, and there is no joy in a hungry child at a cold plate, and you do not pretend otherwise. Usually it does not come to that. Usually the liver goes down in awful heroic swallows, chased by enormous gulps of milk, and Buddy climbs down from the table victorious in defeat, and you clear the plate, and no one speaks of it, and the war resets for tomorrow. What you are really teaching, under the liver and the carrots and the cold gravy, is that food is not to be squandered, that the world was once thin and could be thin again, and that a full plate is a thing some people prayed for. He will not understand this for 30 years. Then one day he will find himself unable to leave a restaurant without finishing, unable to scrape a plate into the trash without a small internal flinch, and he will think of you, and the liver, and the plate that had all night. You have reached the end of the explanation, which is to say you have reached the sentence that ends all explanations. Your daughter has asked why for the 4th time, and the first 3 times you had reasons, and now you are out, and so you say the thing your own mother said to you. Because I said so. It is not an argument. It is the closing of a door. It means the conversation is over, the ruling stands, and no appeal will be heard. You did not enjoy hearing it as a girl. You are surprised how naturally it arrives in your mouth now. The sentence is a marvel of engineering, and you have come to respect it the way you respect a good lock. It has no content whatsoever. It explains nothing, justifies nothing, persuades no one, and it wins every time because it does not argue on the merits. It simply removes the court. Carol cannot appeal a ruling that gives no grounds. There is nothing to grab onto, no reasoning to poke at, no premise to attack. Because I said so is a wall with no handholds, and she has been climbing it, unsuccessfully, since she learned to talk. You resisted this once. You had ideas, as a young mother, about explaining things, about reasons, about a child who understood the why of a rule and therefore chose to follow it. And then you met the actual why loop, the one where every answer produces another why. The child not seeking information but simply enjoying the machine, the endless recursive descent that ends only when the mother's patience or the son runs out. And you discovered why your own mother reached for the wall. It is not laziness, it is survival. There is a point past which explanation becomes the game itself. The phrase does have a certain honesty to it, which you appreciate on your better days. It does not pretend. It says, plainly, that this household is not a democracy, that authority here rests in the adult and not in the strength of the adult's argument, and that some things will be done because the person in charge has decided them. It is basically a company policy delivered without the memo, cold, clear, and strangely respectful in its refusal to insult the child with a made-up reason. But, and you feel this, there is a cost buried in the wall, and you pay it slowly. A child raised entirely on because I said so learns to obey and does not learn to reason, learns the shape of authority and not the substance of a good rule, and there will come a day, years off, when the same girl who cannot appeal your wall will meet other walls, other authorities, and simply obey them too, and you are not certain you will always want that. You file this thought away. It is not a thought for a busy Tuesday. Carol tries one more time. She does not ask why. She has learned, at last, that why is the losing move. Instead, she goes quiet and does the thing, slowly, with the particular dignity of a small person who has been overruled by a power that gave no reasons, and you watch her go, and you feel the old familiar mix of victory and unease that this sentence always leaves in you. Because I said so is the smaller sibling of wait until your father gets home, and between them they run most of your household with almost no expenditure of energy. One defers the sentence upward, the other refuses the appeal entirely. Neither requires you to lift a hand, and both were handed to you, fully assembled, by a woman who is now a grandmother, and who still, when you push back on anything at all, looks at you over her glasses and says, without heat, because I said so. You are managing a tantrum in the cereal aisle, and you have reached for the oldest tool in the drawer, which is fear. You have told him the policeman will take him away if he does not stop, and it works, because he is 6 and the world is enormous and a man in a uniform is the size of God. You keep a small collection of these. The bogeyman in the closet, the stranger who takes bad children, Santa, who is watching and keeping records. You deploy them the way other people use a thermostat, and you tell yourself they are harmless. The collection is larger than you would admit to the pediatrician. There is the bogeyman, resident of the hall closet, activated on nights when the children will not stay in bed. There is the vague and terrible stranger who collects naughty children in a sack, deployed near roads and in crowds. There is the threat, murkier still, that a bad child might simply be given away, which you would never do and have implied you might. And presiding over all of them, jolly, omniscient, and permanently unblinking, is Santa Claus, who you have quietly rebuilt from a Christmas figure into a year-round intelligence service. Santa has become, in your hands, something worth sitting with. You have told your children that a man they cannot see watches everything they do, keeps a permanent written record of it, divides all human behavior into 2 columns, and delivers consequences in December based on the file. This is basically a surveillance state with a beard and a sleigh, and you run it on your own children cheerfully with cookies, and the whole neighborhood is running the identical program, and no one finds it sinister because the enforcement comes wrapped. The policeman is the one that works fastest. A child in full meltdown, immune to reason, immune to every tool you own, will go instantly silent at the sight of a uniform and the whispered suggestion that it has come for him. It is also, a strange thing to teach, that the man whose actual job is to help a lost child is instead the monster who takes a loud one, and you have planted that in your son before he can spell his own name. You did it in the cereal aisle without thinking, the way you reach for salt. The fear is real to him. When you say the bogeyman, a 6-year-old does not hear a management technique, he hears a fact, and he lies in the dark afterward believing it, and the belief does not switch off at bedtime when it has served your purpose. You borrowed his terror to buy yourself a quiet aisle, and the terror does not know it was only supposed to last until checkout. That thought settles in you, and you set it down quickly, because the alternative is a screaming child and a store full of watching women. Danny, at 12, has begun to audit the system, which is how these things end. He has noticed that the closet, opened in daylight, contains only coats. He has noticed that Santa's records seem oddly forgiving each December regardless of the year's data. He is assembling, quietly, the case that the whole apparatus is a bluff, and when he cracks it fully he will crack all of it at once. The policeman and the stranger and the man in the sleigh, and a small door in his childhood will close. For now you still have it, the collection of monsters, and you use them sparingly and effectively, and every mother on this block keeps the identical menagerie in her own hall closet. The policeman turns down the next aisle, an ordinary man buying an ordinary can of coffee, and your son watches him go with enormous eyes and is very, very good all the way home. You are sitting in the third pew from the front, which was a mistake, because the third pew is visible and your children are visible in it, and the sermon has 25 minutes left. This is the hardest hour of your week, not because of your soul, because a squirming child in church is a public grade on your entire competence as a mother, delivered in front of the whole congregation and the minister and your husband's colleagues. So you sit with a hand on each small knee, and you enforce stillness through the gospel, the hymn, and the very long announcements. The pew is an examination hall, and you did not choose to sit for the exam, but here you are, pencils down, 4 small answers arranged beside you in their good clothes, scrubbed, pressed, and already plotting. Danny in the collar that chokes him, Carol in the dress that itches, Buddy already listing toward the hymnal rack with the slow inevitability of a felled tree, and baby Gale, the wild card, capable at any moment of a sound that will turn every powdered head in the sanctuary. You are graded on all 4 at once, in real time, by an audience that is officially thinking about salvation and unofficially keeping score. Reverend Ames means well and preaches long, and the two facts are related. He builds his sermon like a man laying brick, patiently, course by course, and somewhere around the 15th minute the children's supply of stillness, which was never large, begins to run visibly dry. This is the danger zone. This is where a small hand creeps toward a hymnal, where a whisper begins to form, where Buddy discovers that the pew in front has a fascinating brass fitting, and where your entire nervous system moves into the pew and takes up residence. Your tools here are silent, because noise is the very thing you are policing, and so you have developed a whole grammar of the hand. The hand on the knee, resting, means be aware. The hand on the knee, tightening, means stop. The look, the specific sideways look with the lowered brow, is the final warning before the terrible consequence, which cannot be delivered here and must be promised for later with the eyes alone. You conduct all of this without a sound, a silent orchestra of restraint, while appearing, to the pew behind you, to be listening raptly to the Reverend on the subject of Ruth. The candy is the great compromise, and every mother in the sanctuary is running it. A hard butterscotch, roughly the size of a thumbnail, passed low and secret, buys 4 minutes of silence per unit, and you have learned to ration your supply across the length of the sermon like a general rationing water across a desert. Too generous early and you are empty during the announcements, which are somehow always the longest part. It is basically bribing a hostile witness in a house of worship, with your eyes forward and your face serene. The reason this hour costs you so much is that it lands on the exact nerve the whole decade presses. Everywhere else, a badly behaved child is between you and the child. In the third pew, a badly behaved child is between you and everyone, the whole town in their Sunday best, and the judgment is instant and public, and sticks to you and not to him. Mrs. Aldrich, 4 pews back, will have a full report by the parking lot, so you press the knees and ration the butterscotch and pray, a little, genuinely, for the announcements to end. And then the organ finally sounds and it lands like a pardon, and the children rise as one, released, and you file out into the ordinary blessed air of the parking lot, where a child may once again be a child. Reverend Ames shakes your hand at the door and says, "What fine children," and you thank him, and you carry the compliment to the car like something breakable, because you earned it, 1 butterscotch at a time, over the longest hour of your week. You live on a street where the houses are close and the windows face each other, and you have learned that discipline does not stop at your own screen door. Mrs. Farrow 2 doors down will correct your son if she catches him in her flower bed, and she will also mention it to you over the fence, kindly, in a way that is not kind. The mothers on this block are a network. What one sees, all know by afternoon. Your child's behaviour travels the street faster than the milk truck, and it always arrives home before he does. The arrangement has an unwritten charter, and every mother on the block signed it without a meeting. Any adult may correct any child. If Mrs. Farrow catches Danny cutting through her tulips, she does not fetch you first. She deals with him on the spot, a sharp word, a hand on the collar, and only later does she inform you, so that you may deal with him again, at home, for the double offence of trespassing and of being caught trespassing by a neighbour. The jurisdiction is shared, informal, and absolute. The child answers to the whole street. This is basically a neighbourhood watch with no badges and total coverage, and it works because the houses were built close, and the kitchens face the yards, and the mothers are home all day with a clear line of sight to everything. Mrs. Farrow at her sink can see your back lawn, the Delgado's driveway, and a good stretch of sidewalk, and she misses nothing. One node in a mesh that covers the entire block. A child on this street is never truly unobserved. He is being watched by a dozen women who are also, technically, washing dishes. The reporting is the part with teeth, and it is delivered as courtesy, which is what makes it lethal. Mrs. Farrow leans on the fence in the afternoon and says, with great warmth, that she just adores your Danny. Such spirit. And by the way, she found him and the Yardley boy up on the garage roof, and she thought you would want to know. And you do want to know, and you thank her. And you both understand that a small deposit has just been made in an account that is never quite settled, and that next week, when her Ronnie does something, you will make the matching deposit, warmly, over the same fence. Because the network runs on reciprocity, and everyone is both an officer and a suspect. You watch her children and she watches yours, and you report on hers and she reports on yours, and the whole thing is held together by the mutual understanding that no one's child is perfect and everyone's mothering is on display. It is a court where every judge is also a defendant. This keeps the cruelty low and the surveillance total, which is a strange combination, and it is the combination the whole block runs on. When Gail spikes a fever and you cannot leave the house, Mrs. Farrow does not knock. She appears at the screen door with her sleeves already pushed up, collects Danny and Buddy like laundry off a line, and has them fed by noon. The same eyes that report on your children also mind them, feed them, patch their knees, and send them home. You cannot unplug the one without losing the other. Danny comes home from the roof incident already knowing he is caught because he saw Mrs. Farrow see him, and the whole walk home he has understood that the news beat him to the door. That is the deepest lesson of the block, and it lands early. There is no unwatched place. There is no getting away with it in a full view of a dozen kitchen windows. He steps into the house with the resigned face of a boy who lives in a town where everyone is deputized, and he is right, and you point, without a word, at the stairs. You have found the note folded in your daughter's coat pocket, the one she hoped you would not find, and now the afternoon has a shape. The school has its own paddle and its own authority, and if your child was punished there, that is not the end of it, that is the beginning of it. In your house, being disciplined at school earns a second discipline at home, for the disgrace of having required the first. The teacher and you are on the same side. There is no daylight between the school and the kitchen, and a child knows it, and appeals to neither. The note itself is a small masterpiece of dread, and Carol carried it home like a live coal in her pocket, hoping it might simply evaporate somewhere between the school and the front door. It did not. Miss Dunmore writes in the tight, controlled hand of a woman who has written many such notes, and the message is brief, plain, and entirely unanswerable. Carol was disruptive today, and required correction. Please discuss at home. That last line is the hinge. Please discuss at home is not a request. It is a work order, passed from one branch of the government to the other, and you are the branch that received it. Understand what this coordination means, because it is the whole architecture. A child in 1955 has no appeal, none, because the two authorities in his life have agreed in advance never to disagree in front of him. The school does not say the mother was too harsh, the mother does not say the teacher was unfair. They are a united front, sealed, and the child stands before a wall with no seam in it. This is basically two managers who have agreed never to be played against each other, and it leaves the employee who is 9 with absolutely nowhere to file a grievance. Miss Dunmore has her own instruments down at the school, and every child knows them. There is the wooden paddle in the cloakroom, and there is the ruler for knuckles, and there is the far worse punishment of being made to stand at the front while the class watches. Whatever befell Carol at school today, it has already happened, and it is closed, and the note is not about that. The note is about opening a second case at home for the same offence, so that the lesson arrives twice, from two directions, with no possibility of hiding in the gap between them, because there is no gap. You feel the injustice of the double jeopardy, just faintly, the punishing of a thing already punished, and you do it anyway, because the alternative is to side with your child against the teacher, and that would crack the united front. And the united front is the thing that makes the whole system hold. If Carol learns that home is a refuge from school, then school loses its authority in your kitchen, and you have decided that this cannot be allowed. So the wall stays sealed. You reread the note. You call her in. The conversation is short and there is no pleasure in it. The reprimand for the reprimand. And you keep it brief, because the point was never the volume, it was the seamlessness. Carol needs to learn, and does learn, that there is no wedge to drive, no adult to appeal to, no daylight, anywhere, in the arrangement of grown-ups above her. She takes it with the flat face of a child absorbing a rule of physics. What she is really learning, under the note and the discussion, is the shape of the adult world she is being handed. A world where the authorities are coordinated, the record follows you home, and the paperwork of one office becomes the sentence of another. It is a hard lesson and a useful one, and a slightly chilling one, and she files it, and 40 years on, she will still feel a small cold drop in her stomach at the sight of any envelope with her name on it in a tight, controlled hand. You have sent him up the stairs without his dinner, and you can hear him not crying, which is worse, the careful quiet of a child being brave about it. This is a clean punishment, tidy, no implement required, and it doubles as a lesson about the value of the food he did not appreciate an hour ago. You are firm at the bottom of the stairs. You are considerably less firm in the kitchen 20 minutes later, wrapping a biscuit in a napkin, wondering whether you will carry it up, knowing the rule, weighing it against the sound of a hungry 6-year-old. On paper, it is the most elegant tool in the kit. There is nothing to swing, nothing to wash, nothing to fetch from the hedge. You simply subtract a meal, and the subtraction carries its own lesson neatly folded inside it, which is that supper is not a right, but a thing provided, and a boy who scorns it can learn its worth by its absence. The punishment and the moral are the same object. No mother ever had to explain what going without supper was supposed to teach. The empty stomach explains it, patiently, over the course of a long evening. But the elegance is only on paper, and the paper does not account for you, standing in the kitchen, listening, because a hungry child upstairs does something to a mother that a spanked child does not. A swat is over in a moment and the accounts are settled. Hunger is not over. Hunger keeps going, hour after hour, up there in the dark, and you are down here in the warm kitchen with a whole meal congealing on the stove and a direct line of sound to a small person doing without, and the arrangement asks you to simply sit with that, which is harder than swinging anything. Buddy upstairs has adopted the strategy of dignity, which is the one that gets you. He is not wailing. He is not staging a hunger protest at the top of the stairs. He is lying on his bed being quiet, brave, and infuriatingly fine about it, and that careful bravery travels down through the floorboards and lands directly in the soft part of you that the whole system was designed to override. A crying child you can steel yourself against. A silent brave one disarms you completely, and he does not even know he is doing it. So now you are conducting the real negotiation, the one that is entirely internal, the mother against the rule, in the privacy of your own kitchen. The rule says no supper means no supper, that a threat undelivered is a threat destroyed, that if you carry up a biscuit tonight, then tomorrow the punishment means nothing. Your own mother would carry up nothing. Your own mother, in fact, is the reason the rule exists in your head at all. And yet your hand is already reaching for a biscuit and a clean napkin, apparently on its own authority, ahead of any decision you have consciously made. What usually happens is a small, dishonest kindness that the whole culture quietly permits. You wait until the lesson has landed, until an hour of genuine hunger has done its teaching, and then, later, near his real bedtime, you go up with the biscuit, or a glass of milk and an apple, and you sit on the edge of the bed, and you do not frame it as a pardon, exactly. You frame it as a mother who could not sleep. The rule was kept long enough to teach. The kindness came after, off the record. Every mother finds the seam in this one, in the dark, at the top of the stairs, where the strictness and the love both fit. The supper is withheld, the lesson is delivered, and then, quietly, unrecorded, A biscuit makes its way up in a napkin, and a brave, silent boy eats it in the dark, crumbs and all, and neither of you mentions it at breakfast, and the rule stands, officially, undamaged, for tomorrow. You have found the leverage that actually works on a 12-year-old, and it is not the spoon, it is the calendar. He does not fear the switch the way he fears missing the Saturday matinee, the double feature and the cartoon, and the whole afternoon with his friends and a nickel of candy, so you take it. He is confined to the house and the yard, grounded, a word that is new enough to still feel modern, and it is the cruelest thing you own. No bicycle, no pictures, no friends at the door, just you and chores and the long weekend. The discovery came, as these discoveries do, from watching. Danny at 12 has aged out of fearing it. He is too big, too proud, and a swat now insults more than it corrects, and you can see him deciding, mid-punishment, that he can take it, which defeats the entire purpose. So you went looking for the new nerve, the thing a 12-year-old actually cannot bear to lose, and you found it in his social calendar, in the Saturday world of friends and freedom and the movie house downtown, and you realized you did not need it at all. You needed only the power to cancel his weekend. Grounding is a genuinely modern punishment, and it exists because the world gave a 12-year-old somewhere to be. His mother's mother could not ground anyone, because there was nowhere to be barred from. No matinee, no soda fountain, no gang of boys on bicycles ranging across a whole suburb. But the post-war world built a childhood with places in it, and the moment there were places to go, the withholding of them became the sharpest tool in the drawer. You are, in effect, punishing him with the very freedom the decade invented, by taking it back. The Saturday matinee is the crown jewel, and its loss is the loss he feels most. For a dime, he gets exactly 3 separate glories: the cartoon, the cereal with its cliffhanger, and the double feature, the dark, cool theatre full of every kid he knows, the shared candy, the shrieking at the monster, the walk home reenacting the best parts. It is his entire social world compressed into one glorious afternoon, and you can take it with a single sentence at breakfast, and it strikes him harder than any strop ever did. The confinement itself is almost beside the point, but you enforce it because the enforcement is the punishment. He may be in the house or the yard and nowhere else, and this is agony not because the yard is small, but because the world is, this weekend, happening somewhere he is not. The Yardley boy comes to the door and is turned away. The bicycle stands untouched against the garage, radiating reproach. Danny does his chores under a private black cloud, sullen, silent, and thoroughly imprisoned in a comfortable prison, serving a sentence measured not in stripes but in Saturdays. A grounded boy is a boy underfoot, and the loneliness of it costs you as much as it costs him, sulking through your Saturday as well as his own, and the punishment quietly confines the warden along with the prisoner. You cannot send him out. You are stuck with each other, the two of you, in a house that suddenly feels small, and by afternoon a strange thing sometimes happens, which is that he drifts into the kitchen and, out of pure boredom, helps you snap the beans, and the two of you talk, and the sentence turns, without either of you admitting it, into an afternoon together. But you never say that part, and neither does he, because the punishment must keep its teeth. So you hold the line, no pictures, no friends, no bicycle, and Danny serves his weekend and emerges on Monday chastened and, secretly, a little closer to you, and the calendar goes back to being merely a calendar. Its terrible new power holstered until the next time he forgets that you, and not he, control the Saturdays. You have sat your daughter at the kitchen table with a pad of lined paper and a sentence to copy, and the sentence is, "I will not talk back to my mother," and she will write it 100 times. This is punishment through tedium, and it has a bonus, which is penmanship. Her cursive must stay neat all the way to 100, no sloppiness at line 60 when her hand aches, or she starts again. You check the pages. You are looking for the exact moment the letters give up, and when you find it, you point, and she knows what it means. The beauty of the lines, from your side of the table, is that they cost you nothing, and cost her an entire afternoon. You do not have to stand over her. You do not have to raise your voice or your hand. You simply assign the sentence and the number, and then you go about your ironing while the punishment administers itself in ink. One dutiful repetition at a time, filling page after page with a promise she does not mean and will break by Thursday. It is the laziest tool you own and one of the most effective, and it keeps her pinned to a chair for an hour, which on certain afternoons is its own quiet reward. The sentence is always a confession written in the future tense, which is a strange grammar when you think about it. I will not talk back. I will not slam the door. I will remember my chores. She writes what she is promising not to do, over and over, until the promise wears a groove in her hand, and the theory, inherited, unexamined, and entirely unproven, is that a thing written 100 times sinks in somewhere a thing merely said does not. Whether it works is an open question. Whether it fills an afternoon is not. The penmanship rule is the twist of the knife, and Carol feels it around line 40. It is not enough to write the sentence 100 times. It must be written well 100 times, every letter formed, every loop closed, the whole page fit to be seen, because sloppy lines are lazy lines and lazy lines start over, so she cannot race. She cannot scrawl her way to freedom. She must maintain her best hand through the aching wrist and the numb fingers and the pure grinding boredom of it. And the discipline becomes double, the tedium and the standard, tedium with a quality control department. You do inspect them, and this is where you are quietly ruthless, running your eye down the column for the exact line where her patience failed. It is always visible. Somewhere around 60, the loops go slack, the slant wanders, the letters begin to lean on each other like tired commuters, and you find that line, and you tap it with one finger, and Carol's heart sinks, because she knows the tap means the last 40 were a rehearsal. You are not even angry. You are almost admiring. You just point. The small revenge the lines invite gets discovered by every child eventually, and you did too. Carol has begun to experiment with holding 2 pencils at once, or writing all the I's down the page first and then all the will nots, industrializing her sentence, and you pretend not to notice because the ingenuity is frankly the most engaged she has been all day. The punishment meant to bore her has instead set her small mind to solving it, which is not what anyone intended and is possibly the only genuinely educational thing about the whole exercise. She finishes near dusk, 100 neat identical vows stacked on the pad, her hand cramped into a claw, her promise thoroughly not internalized. You take the pages. You do not keep them. The point was never the paper. It was the hour, the pinned afternoon, the cost extracted in tedium and good penmanship, and tomorrow she will talk back again, in beautiful cursive, and you will both know exactly where this leads. You own the book. Everyone owns the book. Dr. Spock's paperback sits on the shelf above the radio, its spine cracked at the chapter about a toddler's feelings, and you read it at night and it makes a kind of sense, all that warmth, all that trust. Then morning comes, and someone hits his sister, and you are reaching for the drawer before you have finished the thought. You are holding 2 instruction manuals that disagree. The book says, understand him. Your own mother says, do not spoil him. You are supposed to follow both, at once, in the same kitchen. The book arrived in 1946, and it sold like nothing before it. 500,000 copies in the first 6 months alone, and by now there is one in nearly every young mother's house in America. Cheap, worn, and quietly revolutionary. Doctor Benjamin Spock wrote it to argue with the very upbringing you received. Trust yourself, he says on the first page. You know more than you think you do, and the sentence undoes you a little every time, because no one had ever said that to a mother before. Pick the baby up. Show him you love him. The schedule is not God. It felt, when you first read it, like a window opening in a stuffy room. And then there is the drawer, and the spoon in it, and the whole older regime that lives in your hands regardless of what lives on your shelf, because you were not raised on Spock. You were raised on the cold clockwork before him, the schedules and the crying it out and the horror of a spoiled child, and that raising is in your muscles, and it fires faster than any chapter you read at midnight. This is basically running a gentle new philosophy on a nervous system built by the old one, and the nervous system, being older, usually wins the morning. So you live in the contradiction, and the contradiction has a geography, and the geography is your kitchen. The book is on the shelf above the radio, elevated, aspirational, the mother you mean to be. The spoon is in the drawer by the stove, low, immediate, the mother you often are. 8 feet separate them, and you travel that 8 feet a dozen times a day, from the shelf to the drawer, from understand him to do not spoil him. No one wrote a chapter about how to hold both. The critics you have read are furious with Dr. Spock, and their fury is instructive. They say he is soft, permissive, that his warmth will raise a generation of disobedient children, that all this understanding of feelings will rot the spine of the country. And here is the thing that would make you laugh if you were not so tired. They are blaming a book for making mothers gentle while nearly every actual kitchen in America, including yours, still has a spoon in the drawer and reaches for it before lunch. The permissive revolution they fear has not remotely arrived. What the book has actually done, in your house, is quieter and more painful than any revolution. It has given you a second opinion. Before Spock, you would have swatted the child and felt righteous, the way your mother felt righteous, no gap between the deed and the certainty. Now, you swat the child and then, that night, you read the chapter about a toddler's feelings, and you feel the gap between what you did and what the book says you might have done, and the gap does not close, and you lie in it. And that is the true modern condition of the 1950s mother. Not gentleness, doubt. So the spoon stays in the drawer and the book stays on the shelf, and you go on travelling the 8 feet between them. And some mornings the drawer wins, and some nights the book wins, and most days it is a draw, and you raise your children in the exact seam between 2 centuries of advice, doing your uncertain best, loving them enormously, and never once feeling that you have gotten it entirely right. Your husband's mother is visiting for a week, and she has been watching how you handle the children, and she has decided to help. She raised 4 boys on the switch and the schedule. She believes your household is soft, and she says so, in comments dropped like coins. In her day, a child did not sass twice. In her day, the strap hung lower. You are running your home under the supervision of a woman who thinks your methods are weak, and your Doctor Spock is a fool, and you cannot argue, because she is your husband's mother, and she is standing in your kitchen holding your baby. Grandmother Prentice arrived on Sunday with 1 suitcase and 40 years of opinions, and she has been deploying the opinions steadily ever since, always sideways, never as an order, because an order could be refused. Instead, she narrates. She watches you handle a squabble and says, mildly, to no one, that her boys knew better than to carry on like that, and the sentence hangs in the air doing its work. She is a master of the observation that is secretly an instruction, and you who thought yourself fairly good at that particular art are learning from a genuine professional. The trouble is that she is not entirely wrong, and you both know it, which strips you of the comfort of dismissing her. Her 4 boys did turn out steady, employed and polite, raised on methods she considers self-evidently correct, because look at the results. She has evidence. She has grown men who call on Sundays. And here you are with your paperback and your doubt, and some small treacherous part of you wonders whether the old woman rocking your baby by the window might simply know something you do not. And then Gail fusses, and Grandmother Prentice does the thing that tells you everything, which is that she picks the baby up. This is the woman who raised 4 sons on the doctrine that you must never spoil an infant with too much holding, that a crying baby builds character, that the schedule is love, and here she is, gathering up your youngest at the first whimper, humming, entirely contradicting the philosophy she has spent the week preaching at you. Grandmothers, you are learning, are permitted to break every rule they enforced as mothers, and they break them shamelessly, and they do not see the contradiction, and it is useless to point out. The deepest awkwardness is the chain of command, because there is no clean line. In your own kitchen you are the authority, except that she is your husband's mother, which outranks you in a way no organizational chart could capture, and Walter, caught between the 2 of you, becomes suddenly and profoundly interested in the newspaper. He will not referee, he knows better. So the 2 of you conduct the whole quiet contest around him, over his head, through the children, in the coded language of women who love the same man and disagree about everything to do with raising his children. The children, meanwhile, have grasped the situation instantly and are working it like a labour dispute. They have discovered that grandmother, for all her stern talk, is a soft touch on the practical matter of cookies, and that the rules bend in her presence, and that a request denied by you may be quietly granted by her at the window, and they are exploiting this gap with the ruthless efficiency of children everywhere. Your entire disciplinary system has a hole in it this week, and the hole is shaped exactly like your husband's mother. She leaves on Saturday with her 1 suitcase, and you love her, genuinely, in the complicated way, and the moment the taxi pulls away your household exhales and settles back into its own uncertain methods, the paperback and the spoon and the doubt. But something she said sticks, the way a burr sticks, and for a week after you find yourself a little firmer, a little more like her, until it fades, and you are only yourself again, until her next visit reopens the whole question. You are drilling the words again, the small, polite machinery that a child must have installed before he can be taken anywhere. Please before the request. Thank you after. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. And never, ever the word want, because want is greedy and I would like is refined. And the difference between them is the difference between a well-raised child and a wild one. You correct him mid-sentence, every sentence, all day, and it is exhausting, and it is not optional. His manners in public are your report card, read aloud by strangers, graded on a curve you did not set. The drilling is constant and it is invisible, which is its particular cost. You are not doing lessons at a set hour. You are correcting all day, in the margins of everything else, catching a want and replacing it with a would like, inserting a please into a demand, appending a thank you to a grab, over and over, 1,000 small interventions between breakfast and bed. It is like tending a garden that regrows weeds by the minute. The word want is the great enemy, and the campaign against it is nearly theological. To say I want is to reveal a naked appetite, and a naked appetite is vulgar, and so the child must be taught to dress the appetite in the softer clothes of I would like, which asks for the identical thing while pretending to be humble about it. Buddy wants a cookie with his whole body, and he must learn to say he would like one, as though the cookie were a matter of mild preference. You are teaching him, in effect, to lie politely about the intensity of his own desires, which is either the foundation of civilization or a small daily fraud, and you have never quite decided which. Yes, ma'am, and no, sir are the load-bearing walls, and they must be automatic, because a child who has to think about them will forget them at the exact moment they matter most. So you drill them until they are reflex, until Buddy answers the minister and the milkman and his own grandmother in the same crisp, flat, and entirely unthinking two-word units, until the courtesy fires faster than thought. This is basically installing software that must run without the user's conscious input, and the deadline is every time you leave the house, because the house is only the rehearsal, and the performance is out there, in public, where the whole point becomes visible. A child's manners in the store, at church, at the neighbour's table, are read instantly by every adult present as a direct dispatch on the mother who made him, and a rude child is not filed under his own name but under yours. Mrs. Delgado's boy once grabbed a cookie without a word at a church social, and the silence that followed was not about the boy. Every woman in that room revised her opinion of his mother in a single breath, and you saw it happen. Something real sits underneath the performance, and you hold on to it on the tired days. Manners are not only a report card, they are also a gift you are giving him, a set of tools that will open doors and smooth rooms and make people glad to have him all his life, long after he has forgotten who installed them. The please that is a burden to teach becomes an ease to possess. You are not only guarding your reputation, you are also, genuinely, equipping him, and the two motives are so tangled you cannot separate them, and you have stopped trying. So you drill the words another day, please and thank you, and yes ma'am and I would like, and Buddy sighs, the enormous sigh of a boy corrected mid-sentence for the 40th time, and somewhere in there the machinery is quietly taking hold, and one day, years from now, he will thank a stranger without being told, easily, automatically, and the stranger will think, what a lovely young man, and will never know it cost his mother 9,000 corrections. You are holding the dinner table to its rules, and the central rule is that no one leaves it without permission. A child does not simply rise and wander off. He waits until the adults are finished, he catches your eye, and he asks, in the correct words, may I please be excused? Only then may he go. Elbows stay off the table. You eat what is served or you eat nothing. Napkin in the lap. No reaching. The meal is not just food. It is a daily examination in self-control. And you are the proctor, and you never take the evening off. The table is a small nightly court, formal, punctual, and entirely without an appeals process, and it convenes at 6. Everyone comes when called, everyone sits where assigned, and everyone stays until released, and the release is not automatic, it must be requested and granted. This last rule is the one the children strain against hardest, because a child who is finished eating experiences the remaining time at the table as a kind of soft imprisonment, trapped in a chair among slow-chewing adults, watching the clock, forbidden to leave the scene of a meal he has already finished. The words matter, and the words are precise. Not can I go, which is sloppy and asks about ability rather than permission. Not I'm done, which announces rather than requests. The correct formula is, "May I please be excused," delivered to you, the granting authority, with eye contact. And Buddy has learned to produce it on the rare evenings he wants out badly enough to be polite about it. It is a tiny ritual of deference performed nightly, the child formally acknowledging that his own body's freedom to leave a chair rests, for now, in his mother's hands. The reaching rule is the one that turns a family dinner into a diplomatic negotiation. You do not reach across the table, ever, no matter how near the butter sits or how far the request would carry. You ask, "Please pass the potatoes." And so the meal becomes a slow web of polite requests crossing back and forth over the casserole, everyone asking, everyone passing, a whole choreography designed to teach that you do not simply take what you want with your own arm, you request it through the proper channel and wait for it to be handed to you. It is basically parliamentary procedure conducted over meatloaf. Elbows off the table, sit up straight, napkin in the lap, chew with the mouth closed, do not speak with food in it. The rules multiply, and each one is small, and the smallness is the trap. Because a child cannot rebel grandly against so many tiny things, he can only fail at them, one by one, and be corrected. One by one, all evening. You are not asking for one big act of obedience. You are asking for 40 little ones per meal, and you notice every miss, and Carol has begun to feel that dinner is less a meal than a nightly performance review with gravy. You enforce all of this not because you are cruel, but because the table is where a child is made fit for other tables, the ones you will not be at, the future dinners with in-laws and employers and the families of friends, where his manners will speak for him and still, somehow, for you. A child who can sit properly through your dinner can sit properly through any dinner, and you are drilling him now so that later he will be welcome everywhere. And that is a real gift, wrapped, as usual, in a nightly ordeal. So the court sits, and the potatoes travel their polite circuit, and Buddy finishes and waits and finally catches your eye and produces the correct words, and you grant the release with a small nod, and he escapes into the evening at last, freed from the chair, and you sit a moment longer among the crumbs, the proctor after the exam, and think that you will do the whole thing again tomorrow at 6, and the day after, for years, until it takes. You have the bottle down from the high shelf, and your son has gone pale, because he knows the taste, and he knows that the line between medicine and punishment in this house is thinner than the oil itself. Castor oil is for a sluggish stomach, officially. It is also, quietly, for a sluggish attitude. A child who has been difficult may find himself dosed for his own good, and he cannot argue that he is well, because who can prove they are well to a determined mother with a spoon? The oil clings to the throat for an hour. He will remember it longer. The bottle lives on the high shelf in the bathroom, next to the mercurochrome and the cod liver oil, and the whole grim pharmacy of things administered for a child's benefit against a child's will. Castor oil is the worst of them by a wide margin, a thick pale grease pressed from a bean, dosed for generations to keep the works moving, and its reputation precedes it into every room. Buddy has only to see the bottle come down to begin his defense, and his defense is always the same, delivered with rising panic. He is fine. He feels wonderful. He has never felt better in his life. The trick of it, the thing that makes castor oil such a peculiar instrument, is the paperwork. It is never officially a punishment. It is always, on paper, a remedy. You do not say you are being dosed because you were rude. You say you have seemed peaked lately, a little off, and a spoonful will set you right. And the beauty of the arrangement is that the child cannot mount a defense, because there is no charge to answer. You cannot prove you are not sluggish. You cannot prove your system does not need setting right. The medicine and the correction wear the same white coat, and only the two of you know which one is really visiting. The taste is the entire technology, and it is a masterpiece of awfulness. Castor oil in the mouth is not sharp, which would at least be over quickly. It is slow and thick, and it coats, spreading a bland, oily film across the whole inside of the mouth and down the throat. A taste with no flavour exactly, only texture, only the sensation of having swallowed something that should be illegal in several countries. It clings for an hour. It repeats on him through the afternoon. A swat ends. Castor oil lingers, which is precisely why it works. The mothers of the block have their techniques for getting it down, and they trade them over the fence like recipes. Orange juice as a chaser, or mixed right in, though this only teaches a child to distrust orange juice. A pinch of the nose, a fast pour, a swallow before the taste can organize itself. Mrs. Ferro swears by root beer. You have tried them all, and there is no gentle way, only the down and the over with, and Buddy takes it the way sailors take bad weather. This house does not keep a clean line between caring for a child and correcting one, and the blurring is the part that stays with you. The same shelf holds the things that heal him and the things that discipline him, and sometimes they are the identical bottle. You reach for the castor oil, telling yourself it is for his stomach, and a small, honest voice notes that his stomach was fine until he sassed you at lunch, and you pour the spoon anyway, and the voice goes quiet. He swallows it, gagging, heroic, and you give him the chaser and a pat and send him off, and he goes with the betrayed dignity of a boy dosed for a crime disguised as a cure. Within the hour, he is himself again, restored, chastened, and unnervingly agreeable for the rest of the day, and you put the bottle back on the high shelf where it waits, patient, medicinal, ready to heal whatever needs healing next, whether it lives in his stomach or in his attitude. You are in the department store and your daughter has chosen this exact moment, the crowded aisle, the watching clerks, to fall apart over a doll. You have a decision to make and no good options. A public scene reflects on you instantly, in front of everyone, and the culture says a firm hand is acceptable right here, right now, in the aisle, and no one will blink. So you crouch, you take her arm, you use the low voice that means business, and you deliver the whole quiet sentence through your teeth while smiling at the clerk, because you are being watched, and you know it. The public tantrum is the worst crisis in a mother's week, and every mother knows the specific cold dread of it. At home, a meltdown is a private matter, handled on your own terms, on your own clock, with the door closed. In the store, it is a performance with an audience you did not invite, and the audience is grading you. All of them, the clerks and the other mothers and the man buying socks, every one of them forming an instant opinion about the woman who cannot manage her own child. What makes it unbearable is that the eyes cut both ways, and there is no move that satisfies all of them. Do nothing, and you are the mother who lets her child run wild, indulgent, weak, a cautionary tale. Do too much, right there in the aisle, and you are the other kind of cautionary tale, the harsh one. The acceptable path is narrow, and you must find it instantly, under pressure, in public. And the path is this: total control delivered at low volume, the firm hand that does not look like a scene, discipline conducted in a whisper. So you develop the crouch, and the crouch is an art form. You go down to her level, which reads as tender to the watching room and lets you get very close to her ear, and you take her arm, gently in appearance, firmly in fact, and you deliver the entire terrible sentence in a voice pitched for one listener only. Stop this now, we are leaving. There will be a reckoning at home. And all the while your face, angled toward the aisle, wears the serene mask of a mother patiently reasoning with her child. It is basically a hostage negotiation conducted with a smile for the cameras. The smile is the strangest part, and you have gotten very good at it. Your mouth is arranged pleasantly for the clerk, while your voice, underneath, is delivering an ultimatum, and Carol experiences the full split, the warm face, and the cold words, and it confuses and quiets her, which is the intent. You are performing calm motherhood for the room while transacting real business with the child, two entirely different messages leaving your body at once, and you are fluent in it, the way every mother on the block is. The cost that stays with you afterward is quieter. The public setting means Carol's real feeling, whatever set off the storm, gets no hearing at all, because there is no room for it in the aisle. You cannot kneel and ask what is wrong. You can only contain, suppress, and remove, because the audience does not permit anything softer, and so the store teaches her, early, that big feelings in public must be swallowed whole and fast. That is not the lesson you would choose. It is the only one the aisle allows. You get her out, finally, to the sidewalk, to the car, and the moment the store door closes behind you, the mask can come off, and you sit in the front seat with a red-faced, trembling girl, and something in you softens, and often the reckoning you promised in the aisle quietly dissolves in the ordinary air outside, replaced by a tired hand smoothing her hair. The performance was for the store. Out here, in the car, it is only the two of you again, and you can afford, at last, to simply be her mother. You have found the comic books under the mattress, the lurid ones with the crime and the horror, and you have read in the paper that a doctor named Wortham says these things are turning children into delinquents, and even the Senate is looking into it. So the comics are contraband now, you confiscate them, You control what comes into the house, what is read, what is watched, because discipline is not only about the hand, it is about the mind, and a mother is expected to guard both. He will hide the next batch better. You will find those too. This is a long campaign. The discovery happened during the weekly bed strip, when you were changing the sheets and your hand found the flat, suspicious lump under the mattress. Out they came, a whole illicit library, lurid, cheap, and thoroughly forbidden. The crime titles with the smoking guns and the horror ones with things rising out of graves, all of it bought with money he was supposed to be saving. Danny had built himself a small hidden world down there between the springs, and you have just repossessed it, and he knows, and the air in the house has changed. You are not making this up as you go, and that is what gives you nerve. In 1954, a psychiatrist named Dr. Frederick Wortham published a whole book arguing that comic books were corrupting the youth of America, and the book was taken so seriously that the United States Senate held hearings about it. Actual senators questioning actual publishers about the effect of a 10-cent booklet on the minds of children. You read about it in the paper. So when you call the comics dangerous, you are not a hysterical mother. You are a citizen in step with the national conversation, and the national conversation has decided that Danny's mattress stash is a threat to the Republic. Sit for a moment with the scale of that, because it is genuinely strange. The same country that hands a mother a paddle and trusts her to raise a whole human being will not trust her to simply throw out a comic book on her own authority. It has to convene the Senate. The anxiety about what children absorb runs so hot that it climbs all the way from your son's mattress to a hearing room in Washington, and somewhere between the two, a self-policing stamp gets invented so that the comics themselves come pre-approved. Your household censorship has a federal partner, because this is the part of discipline nobody counts when they count the spankings. You are not only governing behavior, you are governing intake, standing at the border of the house deciding what crosses it. The comics, the radio programs, later the television, the magazines, the friends whose own mothers you are not sure about. A mother in this decade is a customs officer as much as a warden, inspecting everything that tries to enter a child's mind, confiscating the contraband, waving through the wholesome, and the job never closes because the border is always busy. And here is the quiet joke the whole campaign refuses to see, which is that you are making the comics irresistible. Nothing in the world is as thrilling to a 12-year-old as a thing his mother has declared dangerous, and by confiscating the stash with such gravity you have promoted it, transformed a dime booklet into forbidden treasure, guaranteed that the next batch will be hidden more cleverly and read more hungrily by flashlight. The ban is the best advertisement the comics ever had, and every mother on the block is running the identical unwitting promotion. So the campaign goes on, batch after batch, mattress after mattress, you confiscating and he re-hiding, with no final victory for either side. You are guarding his mind the only way the decade knows how, by subtraction, by the border and the stamp and the sweep of the sheets, and Danny is learning, mostly, to hide things better, which was not the lesson, and is, you suspect, the only lesson a border ever really teaches. You have converted the offence directly into labour, because labour is a currency a child feels. He talked back, so now he is weeding the whole garden bed, on his knees, in the sun, and the punishment and the household both benefit at once. This is efficient discipline. The woodpile needs stacking, the car needs washing, the porch needs sweeping. A misbehaving child is, from a certain angle, a resource, and you are not too proud to use him. He works it off with a scowl, and by supper the scowl has faded into something almost like the satisfaction of a finished job, though neither of you will say so. The economy of it pleases the practical part of you enormously. Other punishments cost the household something and return nothing. An afternoon in the corner produces only a bored child. A spanking produces only a sore one. But an offence converted into chores produces a weeded bed, a clean car, a swept porch, real work extracted from a live source, the household running a little better, precisely because someone misbehaved. You have effectively taxed the misbehaviour and spent the revenue on yard work, and there is a tidy justice to it that the other tools cannot match. The punishment fits itself to the crime with a certain poetry when you do it right. A boy who tracked mud across your clean floor washes the floor. A boy who was careless with his bicycle spends the afternoon cleaning and oiling every bicycle in the family. A boy who spoke to his sister with contempt is assigned to do her most hated chore alongside his own, which teaches the labour and the humility in a single stroke. Danny, hauling the wood he would rather not haul, is learning that actions have a weight, and that the weight is often measured in armloads. The kneeling weed pull is the classic, and every mother reaches for it in summer because the garden always needs it and the punishment is so wonderfully self-replenishing. Down he goes into the bed, into the smell of turned earth and marigolds, the sun on the back of his neck, the endless supply of dandelions that seem to mock him by regrowing as he works, and the job is dull, hateful, and just hard enough. The garden is the most reliable warden you own. It never runs out of sentences. The thing that undercuts the whole punishment is a secret you both discover, and neither admits. Work, it turns out, is not entirely a misery. Somewhere in the second hour of stacking wood, a boy stops sulking and starts to fall into the rhythm of it. The lift and the place and the fit, the pile rising, the satisfying order of it, and the punishment quietly stops being a punishment and becomes, without anyone deciding it, an accomplishment. Danny will not tell you that he ended up almost enjoying it, but you can see the difference between the scowl he started with and the tired, straight-backed pride he carries into supper. He stacks it the way Walter showed him, bark side up so the rain runs off, working the odd lengths into the gaps until the whole face of it sits flat and square and honest. When it is done, he steps back and looks at it a good deal longer than he needs to. You watch this from the kitchen window over the sink, and you say nothing at all about it, because saying something would ruin it, and because the woodpile is doing the talking better than you could. So you assign the chores, crime match to labour, and the yard gets tended and the wood gets stacked, and a scowling boy goes down on his knees in the marigolds and comes up, hours later, a little steadier than he went down. You clear the supper plates. The garden bed is clean. Danny sleeps the deep, clean sleep of someone who worked hard in the sun, and in the morning he will find another dandelion where the last one was, standing there, entirely unbothered, waiting for him. You are holding back the praise, on purpose, because you were taught that too much of it ruins a child. He brought home a good report card and you said that is what is expected, and you meant it, and you did not gush, because gushing produces a swelled head, and a swelled head is the beginning of a spoiled child. Compliments are rationed here like the forehead kiss the old doctors allowed. You love him enormously and you have decided he does not need to hear it constantly, and you tell yourself the restraint is a kind of gift. The theory runs deep, and it came to you from the same cold place the schedules came from. There was a doctor, back before Dr. Spock, a man named Watson, cold, certain, and enormously influential, who told a whole generation of mothers never to hug and kiss their children, to let one forehead kiss suffice at bedtime, on the grounds that affection freely given weakens the character. Your own mother half believed him, and so the idea took root in you, unexamined, that love and praise are dangerous in large doses, and that a good mother doles them out carefully, like sugar in wartime. So you have become a rationing authority for a currency that costs you nothing to print. When Danny does well, you acknowledge it briefly, that is good, that is what is expected, and you move on before the glow can settle. You are guarding against the swelled head, the boy who thinks too much of himself, the vanity the whole culture treats as worse than sadness. It is basically a manager who withholds the good job on principle, convinced that praise spoken aloud will make the worker lazy rather than glad. The theory does not account for his face, and you catch it sometimes. A child does not experience rationed praise as character building. He experiences it as an open question he can never quite close, a small daily hunger to know whether he is doing all right, whether you are pleased, whether the good report card landed anywhere in you at all. He brings you the drawing, the grade, the caught fish, and he watches your face for the thing you have decided to ration, and when it does not come he files away, quietly, that the thing he did was not quite enough. And the awful part is how badly you want to give it to him. You are not a cold woman. When Danny beams up at you with the report card, everything in you wants to gather him up and tell him he is wonderful, brilliant, the pride of your whole life. And you clamp it down, because the doctor and your mother and the whole decade are standing behind you saying, do not spoil him. And you hand him instead a measure that is good, and you both go on a little hungrier than you needed to be. The wall is not perfect, which is its saving grace, because the love leaks out around the edges of the rule no matter how tightly you hold it. It leaks in the extra helping slid onto his plate, the shirt mended without a word, the light left on a little longer, the hand that lingers on his hair. You cannot fully ration a mother, whatever the doctors say. The praise is damned at the front door and it seeps in through 100 small unlisted acts. And Danny is more soaked in your approval than either of you officially admits. Danny is asleep by the time you come up, and the report card is still out on the dresser where he left it, angled toward the door so it would be seen. You straighten it until the corner lines up square with the edge of the wood. You put out the light. And tomorrow you will ration the praise again, a little less tightly than the day before, the dam quietly failing in the only direction a mother could ever want it to fail. You have the ladies' home journal open on the kitchen table to the child-rearing column, and it is telling you something that contradicts what the pediatrician told you, which contradicts what your mother told you, which contradicts the column from last month. You are the first mother in history to be marketed a constant stream of expert opinion about your own competence. Parents Magazine, Good Housekeeping, The Doctor, Doctor Spock. Everyone has a method. All the methods disagree, and every one of them is happy to explain, at length, why the thing you did this morning was a mistake. You close the magazine, you feel worse and better informed. This is genuinely new, and you cannot yet see how new it is. Your grandmother raised children with exactly one source of advice, which was her own mother, and if her own mother was wrong, she was at least wrong quietly and only once. You have a dozen sources, and they all print monthly, and they arrive in your mailbox looking authoritative, glossy, and certain. You have been handed more information than any mother in history, and, along with it, more ways to feel that you are failing. The columns have a house style, and the house style is gentle alarm. There is always a new danger you had not considered, a thing you are doing that a study now suggests may harm the child, a subtle mistake in feeding or sleeping or scolding that the modern mother really ought to correct. Each column solves a worry and, in solving it, introduces two more. You did not know, until this morning, that the way you wean or the tone you use at bedtime might be quietly shaping the whole future person. And now you know, and you cannot unknow it. Dr. Gazelle is in these pages too, with his charts, telling you exactly what a normal child should be doing at each age. And this is the cruelest column of all, because it comes with numbers. A child who is not talking on schedule, not walking on schedule, not behaving on the timetable the chart provides, becomes, in the logic of the magazine, a problem with a measurement attached. You look from the chart to your own youngest, doing things in his own sweet order, and the cold little worry starts, the one your grandmother was mercifully never handed. The deepest trick of the whole industry, though you would not put it this way, is that it needs you anxious. A confident mother does not buy the next issue. A mother who feels she has it handled has no reason to read the column that tells her she does not. So the reassurance is always partial, always followed by a fresh concern, always renewing the subscription, and you are caught in a loop that a modern person would recognize instantly as the exact machinery of a wellness feed, refreshing forever, the calm always one issue away, and yet you keep reading, because the loneliness of the alternative is worse, and this is the part that keeps the whole thing turning. Alone in the house all day with 4 children and no one to ask, the column is company. It is a voice that has thought about the thing you are struggling with, a professional who takes your daily work seriously enough to write about it, and even when it makes you feel worse, it also makes you feel seen, part of a vast, invisible sisterhood of mothers all reading the same page. You would not give that up. You just wish it cost a little less peace. So you close the ladies' home journal and set it on the pile, and you go back to raising your children the way you actually raised them, on instinct and fatigue and love, which is what you were always going to do anyway. The experts hover over your shoulder, contradicting each other, and you do the next thing, and the magazine waits on the table for tonight, when you will open it again, hungry and wary, to find out the newest way you are getting it wrong. You are on the party line, the shared telephone line, and you have learned to say nothing you would not want the block to hear, because Mrs. Aldrich listens, everyone knows she listens, and a mother's business travels this wire-like current. Your reputation lives partly in your children's behaviour and partly in what the neighbours say about it, and the two are the same thing. If your boy is caught throwing rocks, it is not just his failure, it is a story, and the story has your name in it. So you discipline with one eye on the child and one eye on the audience you cannot see but can always feel. The party line is the strangest utility in the house, a telephone you share with 3 other families, each with its own ring, all of you drinking from the same wire. When you lift the receiver, you may find the Yardleys already talking, and you are meant to hang up quietly and try later, and mostly people do, Mostly. Mrs. Aldrich down the block has made a quiet career of not hanging up, patient, silent, and entirely shameless. Listening in with a hand over the mouthpiece and her breath held, gathering the news of the street one intercepted call at a time, and so everyone simply talks as though she is there because she is. This changes how you speak, and it changes how you discipline, in ways that go all the way down. You cannot vent about your own child on the telephone, cannot confess to a friend that Danny has been impossible, because a confession on the party line is not private, it is a bulletin. So the troubles stay inside the house, unspoken on the wire, and you carry them alone, because the one tool that might have shared the load, a frank talk with another mother, is wired directly into the neighborhood's nervous system. Reputation, in this arrangement, is not something you have, it is something the street keeps for you, a shared account that every neighbor can deposit into or withdraw from. Your standing rests on your children, on their manners and their behavior in public, and the moment one of them slips, the slip becomes a story, and the story acquires your name, and the story travels. It is basically a neighborhood feed with no delete button, every post permanent, every mother both a contributor and a subject. So you find yourself disciplining for the audience as much as for the child, and you are not proud of it. When Buddy acts up in the front yard, in full view of 3 kitchen windows, your correction is sharper, faster, more visible than the same offence would earn indoors, because indoors it is between you and him, and outdoors it is on the record. You are performing competent motherhood for a jury of women you cannot see, and the performance costs the child a harder word than he strictly deserved. You have developed a code for the wire, and every woman on it speaks the same one. A child who is impossible becomes a child who is spirited. A husband who drinks becomes a husband who has been tired lately. A bruise becomes a fall on the porch step. The whole block is fluent in this second language, and every listener on the line can translate it perfectly, including Mrs. Aldrich, which is the joke at the bottom of the entire arrangement. You are not hiding anything. You are performing the hiding, and the performance is the thing everyone has agreed to accept. You hang up the telephone carefully, having said only what you meant the block to hear. Somewhere down the line, a receiver settles back into its cradle a half-second after yours, which is how you know, and which is how she knows you know. Your children go on broadcasting from the front yard all afternoon, and you go on raising them under that light, watched and reported and held, and every woman on the wire is doing the same, in code, in her own kitchen, with her hand over her own mouthpiece. You are enforcing the bedtime, 7:30 sharp, and you enforce it the way your own mother did, by the clock and not by the child. The old doctors said a schedule is love, that a baby left to cry itself to sleep learns something valuable, and that picking him up every time he fusses will ruin him. You half believe it still. So the light goes off at 7:30 whether or not he is tired, whether or not he is frightened, and you sit downstairs listening to the small sounds from above, holding the line, telling yourself that the schedule is the kindness and the picking up is the weakness. The schedule is an article of faith in your house, handed down and rarely questioned. The doctors before Dr. Spock, the clockwork men, taught that a child thrives on regularity above all, that the firm unvarying bedtime is not a cruelty, but a gift. And there is truth in it, you have seen it. A house on a schedule is calmer than a house without one. But the rule goes further, into the part where a child who is tired, wired, and frightened is simply not admitted as evidence. 7:30 is 7:30. That is the whole cruelty and the whole comfort of it. The clock does not consult the child. If Buddy is frightened of the dark tonight, the dark comes at 7:30. If Carol is not remotely sleepy, the light goes off at 7:30 and she lies there in the enforced dark waiting for a sleep that has not arrived. You have handed the bedtime to the clock so that it cannot be argued with, and a clock, unlike a mother, has no soft spot a child can find and press. The crying it out is the hardest part, and it goes against everything your body says. When the baby fusses in the dark, every nerve you own says go up the stairs, and the book on the shelf says do not, says that going up teaches the baby to fuss, that comfort freely given becomes a demand. So you sit at the bottom of the stairs with your hands knotted in your apron, listening to a sound designed by evolution to make you rise, and refusing to rise, and calling the refusal love because the doctors told you to. The quiet rebellion that most mothers run, and you run it too, happens after dark. The schedule is enforced in daylight and softened at the top of the stairs. You hold the 7:30 line where anyone might see it, firm, principled, the light off on time. And then, an hour later, when the house is quiet and the book is shut downstairs, you go up, softly, and you sit on the edge of the bed, and you put a hand on the frightened one, and you stay until the breathing goes slow, giving in the dark the comfort you withheld in the light. The rule stands, officially. The mother breaks it, privately, every night that needs breaking. The whole cold arrangement dies right here, every night, on the edge of a mattress with the fourth stair creaking under you on the way up because it has never once kept a secret. Dr. Spock is on the shelf downstairs saying, "Pick him up," and your mother is in your muscles saying, "Let him cry," and the two of them fight it out over your head every night, and the winner, most nights, is not a doctor at all, but the plain animal fact of your hand reaching, in the dark, for a child who needs it, whatever the clock says. So the bedtime holds, 7:30, firm and public, and the softening comes later, quiet and unrecorded, and Buddy falls asleep believing he settled himself while your hand rests on his back, and both things are true at once, the schedule and the softness, and you go back downstairs having kept the rule and broken it in the same motion. The fourth stair creaks again on the way down. The kitchen clock says 9. You have two voices and your children can tell them apart from across a playground. There is the ordinary voice, the one that issues warnings all day, warnings that everyone treats as weather. And there is the other voice, the low flat one, the one that drops half an octave and uses the full name, first and middle. When the middle name comes out, the game is over. Your son can be dead asleep to the first voice and bolt upright at the second. You did not train them to do this. They calibrated you the way you calibrated them, by trial, over years, in both directions. The first voice is the workhorse, and it is mostly ignored, which is by design and by exhaustion. All day long you issue small warnings, "Do not stop that, I mean it," in a tone the children have correctly learned to file under weather, the ambient background noise of a mother managing 4 small people through a long day. They no longer flinch at it. It is not meant to make them flinch. It is a running commentary, a fence made of words, and they lean on it and it holds and nothing happens. And that is the point of the first voice, that it costs nothing and mostly works and asks for very little in return. The second voice is a different instrument entirely, and you use it perhaps twice a week. It is quieter than the first, not louder, which is the thing people never expect, and the quiet is what makes it land. It comes out quiet, slow, and level, and it carries the full name, and the full name is the tell, the horn before the storm, the switch from ordinary to serious announced in a single dropped octave. Danny, mid-crime, will hear the first syllable of his middle name and stop as though he has walked into glass, because the second voice does not warn. It declares, and every child in the house knows the difference in his bones. Nobody built the two voices on purpose. You did not sit down and design this system. It grew the way a path grows across a lawn, worn in by use, calibrated on both sides over years of small trials. The children learned exactly how far the first voice would stretch before the second arrived, and you learned exactly which offences were worth the second voice and which could ride on the first. And the whole thing settled into a shared grammar the two of you speak fluently and neither of you ever wrote down. It is basically a private language with only one rule, and the rule is the middle name. The second voice only keeps its power if it stays rare, and that is the danger you feel and guard against. Spend it too freely, and it becomes the first voice, just more tired, and then you have nothing left, no gear above it, no horn that still means storm. So you ration the second voice with real care, holding it back through the small offences, saving it for the moments that genuinely need it, because a mother who shouts all day has taught her children that shouting is weather too, and has quietly disarmed herself. So you keep the two voices, the daily one and the rare one, and you move between them with a precision you never consciously learned, and Danny navigates by them the way a sailor navigates by sound and sky. Most days you live entirely in the first voice, the gentle, useless fence of it, and the second voice hangs in reserve, unused, powerful precisely because it sleeps. And on the rare afternoon when it finally comes out, low and level, carrying the full name across the yard, every child within earshot goes still at once, and you are reminded, a little uneasily, of exactly how much a mother can do with nothing but a change of tone. You are standing over your daughter while she writes the thank you note, because a gift received is a debt, and the debt is paid in careful handwriting within the week or the family is shamed. Aunt Pearl sent $1, and Aunt Pearl will expect acknowledgement, and if none comes, Aunt Pearl will mention it to your mother, who will mention it to you. So your daughter writes, "Dear Aunt Pearl, thank you for the generous gift," and she means none of it, and that is not the point. The point is the form, correctly observed, on time, in ink. Manners are a discipline like any other. The note is a small machine for converting a gift into an obligation and back into good standing, and the whole extended family runs on it. Aunt Pearl's dollar was not really a dollar. It was a move in a decades-long game of courtesy, and it requires a counter-move, the note within a decent interval, or the ledger goes unbalanced and word travels. Miss the note and you have not merely forgotten a thank you. You have, in the language of the family, revealed something about how your children are being raised, and the revelation lands, as always, not on the child but on you. Carol experiences the whole exercise as a peculiar form of forced labour, and she is not entirely wrong. She is being made to write, in her best hand, a warm and grateful message to a great aunt she has met twice, and cannot clearly picture, about a gift she has already spent, in words she does not feel. The note is a small fiction, politely maintained, and she must produce it convincingly, and if her gratitude looks thin on the page, if the handwriting rushes or the message runs short, you send it back to be done again, warmer, longer, and considerably more moved than any child has ever been by a dollar. This is where you teach the deep lesson under the manners, the one Emily Post built a whole empire on, which is that what you feel and what you owe are two different accounts. Carol does not feel grateful, and that is permitted, but she still owes the note, and the note must read as though the feeling were there. You are teaching her to perform a sentiment on schedule, to dress an obligation in the clothes of warmth, and this is either the foundation of a civil society or a small lifelong training in polite insincerity, and you have long since stopped trying to decide which, because the note is due Friday either way. Emily Post herself sits behind all of this, her fat book of etiquette on the shelf next to Dr. Spock, telling you exactly how such a note should read, how it should open and close, how soon it must be sent. She is the law here, and you follow her the way you follow the other experts, half in agreement and half in exhausted compliance, because a child whose notes arrive late and cold is a child whose mother did not teach her, and Emily Post and Aunt Pearl and your own mother are all, in the end, grading the same paper. So Carol writes the note again, warmer this time, and blows on the ink, and you inspect it and find it acceptable, and it goes into an envelope and out into the mail toward a great aunt who will read it with satisfaction and mention to your mother what a lovely, well-brought-up girl you have. The debt is paid, the ledger balances, and Carol, cramped hand and unfelt gratitude and all, has learned the first lesson of a lifetime of correspondence, which is that the note is not about how you feel, it is about that it arrives. You have the childcare book open to the developmental chart, the one that lists what a normal child does at each age, and your youngest is behind on it, and the chart does not care why. Dr. Gezel laid out the timetable, and now you measure your own baby against it and feel a cold worry when he falls short. A child who is late is, in the logic of the chart, a problem to be corrected, rather than a person growing at his own pace. So you push, you drill the words, you treat slowness as disobedience, because the chart gave you a number, and the number is behind. The chart is the newest thing in your arsenal, and in some ways the coldest, because it turns a baby into a measurement. Dr. Arnold Gezel, up at Yale, watched a great many children and worked out the ages at which the average one sits, stands, speaks his first word, sorts his shapes, minds his manners, and he printed it in a tidy grid, and now every mother in America has that grid and holds her own child up against it like a tailor with a tape. Your baby is a person, warm and specific and entirely himself. The grid does not see a person. The grid sees a data point, on time or late. And yours, this one, is late on words, and the lateness has planted a small cold seed of worry that follows you through the day. He is bright, curious, and plainly happy. He understands everything. He points and laughs and hauls the dog around by its patient ear. But the words are not coming on the schedule the grid demands, and the grid has quietly reframed your happy silent baby as a problem with a due date. You did not used to worry about a quiet baby. Your grandmother certainly never did. But you have the chart now, and the chart cannot be unlearned, and so you worry. Here is where the chart does its real damage, which is that it converts patience into pressure. Left alone, you would simply wait, the way mothers always waited, trusting that the words would arrive when the child was ready. But the chart will not let you wait, and so you push, drilling the words at him. Say ball, say dog, say mama, turning the sweet, ordinary business of a baby learning to talk into a small daily examination he keeps not passing. And a strange thing happens, the thing the chart never warns you about, which is that the pushing makes it worse, that a baby drilled and anxious is slower than a baby left in peace. And this is the part that would be funny if it did not cost you so much sleep. The chart, meant to reassure, is the very thing generating the alarm. Before the grid, a late talker was just a child who talked late and then, one day, talked. After the grid, the same child is a deviation, a worry, a reason to hold the baby up against the tape a dozen times a day and feel the cold drop each time, and the whole anxiety is manufactured entirely by the existence of the number. It is basically a growth percentile app that has learned to make you afraid of your own child. So you close the chart, finally, on the honest afternoons, and you pick the baby up and stop drilling, and just let him be the specific late-talking happy person he is. And the worry loosens its grip a little, and you remember that your grandmother raised a house full of children with no grid at all, and most of them turned out able to speak. And sure enough, in his own time and not the chart's, the words begin to come, one and then a flood, and you realize the baby was never behind at all. He was on his own schedule, which the chart had simply neglected to print. You are saying the sentence as you reach for the spoon, the sentence every mother says at this moment, that this hurts you more than it hurts him. He is looking at you with the flat disbelief of a child who has done the arithmetic and finds it does not add up. You are not sure you believe it either, standing there, and yet you say it, because your mother said it, and because it is a way of telling him that the punishment is a duty and not a pleasure, that you take no joy in it, that it is being done to you both by something larger than the kitchen. The sentence is a small marvel of misdirection, and Buddy is old enough now to see straight through it. On its face it makes no arithmetic sense at all, and he knows it, and his face says he knows it, because whatever this is about to hurt, it is very plainly going to hurt him more than it hurts you, and the claim that the reverse is true insults his intelligence at the exact moment he can least afford to say so. It is the one thing in the whole ritual he is not allowed to argue, and it is also the one thing that is obviously false, and the collision of those two facts is written all over him. And yet the sentence is not quite the lie it appears to be, which is what keeps mothers saying it. Because there is a real thing underneath it, a genuine ache you feel in the chest at the moment before, the reluctance, the wish that it were not necessary, the small grief of a woman who loves this child and is about to hurt him, because the whole culture has told her that is love, that ache is real. The sentence is a clumsy attempt to name it, to tell the child that you are not enjoying this, that no part of you wants to, that you are, in your own strange way, also paying. The words come out wrong. The feeling under them is true. The sentence is doing something else in the room, underneath the arithmetic. It relocates the authority. It tells the child that neither of you is fully in charge here, that the punishment is not your whim but your duty, handed to you by your mother and her mother and the church and the whole weight of how things are done, and that you are only the instrument, not the author. You did not decide that boys who do this get that. You inherited it. And the sentence, awkward as it is trying to say exactly that you are both caught in the same old machine, one of you holding the spoon and neither of you having built it. The moment itself is brief and quiet, as these moments are, and there is no comedy in it, and you would not reach for any, and it passes, and the ritual completes, and the sentence hangs in the air afterward, awkward, unbelieved, and strangely necessary. Buddy does not believe it hurt you more. He is right not to believe it, but some part of him registers, dimly, that you did not want to, that the reluctance was real, and that registration matters more than the arithmetic, and will outlast it. Years from now, when Buddy is a father with a child of his own and a moment like this arrives in his own kitchen, he will hear the sentence rising in his own throat, uninvited, in your voice, and he will understand it at last from the other side. He will feel the ache the words were always failing to name, the reluctance, the sense of a duty handed down and not chosen, and he will either say the sentence, as you did, because his mother did, or he will close his mouth and set the spoon back in the drawer, and that choice, when it comes, will be the whole quiet argument of the century turning over in a single kitchen. You are refusing to accept the apology, because the apology was bad. He said sorry the way a child throws a coin, fast, to be rid of it, and you have sent it back. You will have the real one, the one with eye contact and the right tone and no mumbling, or you will keep him here until it arrives. This is discipline of the interior, the hardest kind, the attempt to correct not just the behavior but the feeling behind it. A hollow sorry does not close the account. You are teaching him that you can tell the difference, and, more alarmingly for him, that you will wait. The first apology was a forgery and you both know it. Buddy produced the word sorry at high speed, aimed roughly at his sister, eyes on the door, the whole thing engineered to satisfy the letter of your demand while containing not one particle of actual regret. It is a child's oldest trick, the counterfeit apology, and you have been accepting and rejecting these for years, and you can spot a bad one the way a bank teller spots a bad bill, instantly, by feel, before you have even finished counting. So you send it back, which is where this particular discipline turns strange, because now you are not asking him to do something, you are asking him to feel something, and feelings cannot be handed over on command. Mean it, you say, and the instruction is almost impossible, because a boy who does not feel sorry cannot simply decide to, and yet you stand there requiring it, and he stands there unable to produce it, and the two of you are locked in the oldest deadlock in the house, the one where a mother demands sincerity and a child has only performance to offer. The deep and slightly troubling thing you are actually teaching has edges you feel even as you do it. You are not really teaching him to feel sorry. You cannot teach that. What you are teaching him is to produce a convincing performance of feeling sorry, to summon the eye contact and the softened voice and the right pause until the performance is good enough to pass your inspection. You are, in effect, coaching him in sincerity as a skill, which is a paradox with a child in the middle of it, and it is basically directing an actor toward a more believable read of a line he does not believe. And yet, and this is what keeps you doing it, something real sometimes happens in the forcing. Sometimes, held there, made to slow down, made to look his sister in the face and say the word properly, Buddy actually crosses over, and the performance he began as a fraud turns, somewhere in the middle, into the genuine thing, the slowing down having done what the speed prevented. The act becomes the feeling, not always, but often enough that you keep requiring the real apology, because occasionally the requiring is what summons it, and a child dragged slowly through the motions of regret sometimes arrives, to his own surprise, at the actual place. So you hold him there, gently, past the counterfeit, past the resentment, until the second apology comes, and this one is slower, quieter, and visibly expensive, and it lands differently in the room, and his sister feels the difference, and so do you. You accept it, the account closes, and Buddy walks away having learned the strangest lesson in the whole disciplinary catalogue, which is not that he must never wrong his sister, but that when he does, the price is not a swat or a corner, but the far harder work of meaning it, out loud, to her face, while his mother waits with the patience of someone who has all afternoon and will know the real thing when she hears it. You have begun to suspect that your children are running a quiet operation of their own, underneath yours, and you are right. They know which parent to ask for what and when. They know that a request routed through you at the wrong hour dies, and the same request routed through your husband after dinner lives. They have learned your tells, your schedule, the exact width of the gap between a threat and its enforcement. Above all, they have learned the supreme skill the whole apparatus accidentally teaches, which is not obedience at all, but the fine art of simply not getting caught. The operation is sophisticated, and it has departments. There is intelligence, the constant gathering of data on your moods, which day you pay bills and go short-tempered, which hour before supper you are too busy to enforce anything, the precise sequence of warnings that precedes the second voice. There is logistics, the timing of a request for exactly the moment your resistance is lowest. And there is diplomacy, the careful routing of each petition to whichever parent is likeliest to grant it, a small State Department operating entirely below your notice from somewhere around the height of the kitchen table. The parent routing is the masterstroke, and you have watched Danny run it with the cool competence of a career official. A request for a later bedtime, denied by you flatly at 5 o'clock, is quietly refiled with your husband at 8, framed differently, softened, timed to his after-dinner good mood, and granted, and the two of you never compare notes because you are both tired, and the child has counted on exactly that. He is playing you against each other, gently, expertly, exploiting the one seam in the united front that the united front never noticed, which is that it is made of two people who do not always talk. The part that would alarm you, if it did not also secretly impress you, is the arithmetic. The whole apparatus you run, the drawer and the corner and the threats and the rules, was meant to teach obedience, and it has certainly taught something. But the something is not quite obedience. It is cunning. A child raised inside a dense net of rules and surveillance does not primarily learn to follow the rules. He learns the rules so well that he can find their gaps, learns the surveillance so well that he can time its blind spots, and becomes, by pure necessity, an expert in the one skill the whole system was built to prevent, which is getting away with it. None of the experts printed this part in any column. You cannot build a machine this elaborate around a clever child without also, inevitably, training him to beat it. Every rule teaches its own loophole. Every threat teaches the value of the moment before it lands. Every all-seeing eye teaches, by its very thoroughness, exactly where it cannot see. You have, without meaning to, run your children through a years-long apprenticeship in reading authority, managing it, and slipping around its edges, which is either a failure of discipline or the single most useful education they will ever get. So you let it stand, mostly, once you see it, because you cannot help admiring the craft. You tighten the seams where you can, you and your husband comparing notes now and then to close the routing lanes, but you know the operation will simply adapt. Find the new gap, refile through the new channel, because that is what it does, that is what it is for. And on the afternoon you catch Danny mid-maneuver, playing the angles with a face of perfect innocence, wide, blank, and entirely fraudulent. You feel the strange double pull of every mother in the decade, wanting to correct him and wanting, just a little, to congratulate him, because the small operator at your kitchen table is going to do just fine, in a world that is, after all, only a larger set of rules to be read. You are quoting the line, the one that settles the whole matter, spare the rod and spoil the child, and you are quoting it as scripture, because that is how it was handed to you. It arrives with the full weight of the Bible behind it, and it ends the discussion the way because I said so ends the smaller ones. Discipline, in this framing, is not cruelty. It is obedience to God and duty and the way things have always been done. You are not hitting a child. You are declining to spoil him, which the proverb has assured you is the loving thing. And who are you to argue with the proverb? The line does an enormous amount of work in a very small space, which is why it has lasted so long. In 8 words, it takes the whole uneasy business of striking a child and reframes it as a religious obligation, a thing you do not merely to correct a boy but to save him, to keep him from the ruin that awaits the unrodded. It converts a hard act into a holy duty, and a mother who might otherwise flinch is handed a proverb that tells her the flinching itself is the danger, that mercy here is a kind of neglect, that to spare is to spoil. Here is a fact that would unsettle the whole block if anyone mentioned it, which no one does. The exact words, "spare the rod and spoil the child," are not actually in the Bible. They come from a comic poem written sometime around 1663, a satirical thing, and over the centuries they drifted loose of their author and attached themselves to scripture by sheer repetition, until everyone simply assumed the line was Holy Writ. There is a verse in Proverbs about the rod, yes, but the tidy, famous couplet everyone quotes was written by a poet, not a prophet, and the whole decade is leaning its hardest practices on a misremembered joke. You heard it first from your own mother, over a sink, with her hands in the water and her back to you, and she had it from hers the same way, and not one woman in that chain ever went looking for chapter and verse. But the misremembering does not matter to how it works, because the line's power was never really about its source. The line is short, familiar, and entirely unexamined, and its power is that it ends thought. Quote it, and the conversation stops before it can finish forming. It is basically a company slogan that everyone believes came down from the founder, repeated so often and so confidently that no one checks the archive, and it governs behavior precisely because no one checks. The proverb does not need to be true. It needs only to be unquestioned, and it is. Look at what the whole apparatus is standing on. The spoon and the strop and the switch, the corner and the soap and the cold plate, the entire elaborate machine of correction rests at bottom on a handful of inherited sentences that nobody has ever checked. A proverb that turns out to be a poem, a doctrine that turns out to be a fashion, a certainty that turns out to be a habit wearing the robes of a law. Nobody checks. The line does the checking for them. So you quote the line as your mother quoted it, and it does its work, ending the argument, blessing the duty, and you reach for the tool it has just sanctified. But a poem is a poem, and the next time the line rises in your throat, it arrives with a hairline crack in it, still usable, still quoted, but no longer quite scripture. And that small crack, multiplied across 1,000,000 kitchens and a few more years, is roughly how a thing that everyone knows for certain quietly stops being known at all. You are watching your oldest girl with her own doll, practicing being a mother the way girls do, and you notice she does not reach for the little wooden spoon in the toy kitchen. She scolds the doll and then she hugs it, in that order, and something in you goes quiet. You have run the kit you were handed, the spoon and the strop and the corner and the fear, because it was handed to you and you did not know there was a choice. But you can feel the ground shifting under the decade. The book on the shelf is winning, slowly. Your daughters may inherit a softer house. Carol scolds the doll the way she has seen it done, in a firm, low voice, wagging a small finger. And then, and this is the part that stops you, she gathers the doll up and holds it close and murmurs that it is all right now. Scold and then hold. Correction and then comfort, in one unbroken motion, with no gap between them and no drawer opened in the middle. She has taken your discipline and added something to it, and the version she is practicing is not quite the version you were given. You think about your own mother, and her mother, and the long cold line of women behind you, the schedules and the switches and the forehead kisses rationed out one per night. Each of them ran the house she inherited, believing it was love, because that was the only shape love had ever been shown to her. You are the first in that line to have a second opinion sitting on the shelf above the radio. It has changed almost nothing you do, and nearly everything you notice, which is a smaller thing than a revolution and turns out to be enough, because you can feel the decade turning, even from inside your own kitchen. The strop still hangs by the bathroom door, but it comes down less than it used to. The book on the shelf is being read in more houses every year, and its later editions, you have heard, are growing bolder, beginning to say plainly that the rod teaches only that the bigger person wins. The old certainties are developing hairline cracks, quiet, small, and entirely irreversible. The proverb revealed as a poem, the schedule revealed as a fashion, the whole confident apparatus quietly losing its grip finger by finger. What stays longest, watching Carol with her doll, is the direction of it. The change will not come from the experts or the columns or the Senate hearings, though they will take the credit. It will come from exactly this, from a girl who has disciplined the old way and who, holding her own child someday, will feel the spoon rising in her hand and will set it down, not because a book told her to, but because she remembers being small and remembers the corner and the cold plate and the leather sound from the other room, and decides that her own children will remember something else. The memory does the reforming. The daughter closes the drawer, so you watch her scold and hug the doll, in that order, and you do not correct the sequence, because the sequence is the future. You have run the machine you were handed as gently as it would let you, softening it where you could, breaking its rules in the dark, carrying biscuits up the stairs, going up when the doctrine said stay down. And your daughters were watching all of it, the strictness and the softening both, and they will keep the softening and let the strictness go. The spoon will still be in that drawer when Carol is grown. It will simply stay there, and no one will make a speech about it, and the drawer will go on sticking. It is a tough century to be small in, but it is, slowly, getting kinder, and you are, almost by accident, the hinge it turns on. So, that was your night in the 1950s. You hovered over a wooden spoon that also made the gravy, timed a child in the corner by the tick of the kitchen clock, and ranked the bars of soap by cruelty, ivory for the small sins, lava for the felonies. You sent a boy to the hedge to cut the very branch that would be used on him, quoted a proverb that turned out to be a poem, and ran Santa Claus as a year-round surveillance program with cookies. And through all of it you said wait until your father gets home, and mostly you never told him a thing. It is easy, from here, to make it all sound like a comedy of spoons and switches. But there were real women in those kitchens, doing the only kind of mothering they had ever been shown, loving their children fiercely in a language of firmness they had inherited and never chosen. They carried biscuits up the stairs in the dark. They went up when the doctrine said stay down. They softened the machine wherever it would let them, quietly, off the record, one small mercy at a time. and their daughters were watching. That is the part that stays with you. The whole slow turn of it lived not in the experts or the hearings, but in a girl with a doll, scolding and then holding, in that order, deciding without a word that her own house would be a little warmer than the one she grew up in. Thank you for spending this long, strange evening on that suburban street with me. You can let the block go quiet now. Let the party line fall silent. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let your hands unclench from the apron they were never really holding, and let the warm, dark kitchen of your own breathing settle over you. The spoon is back in the drawer. The lights are off up and down the street. Sleep well.